What if I told you that the reason you feel mentally drained, emotionally tired, and constantly overwhelmed may not be because your life is too difficult, but because you have been accepting energy that quietly destroys your peace? What if the real problem is not stress, but the people, conversations, and environments you keep allowing into your inner world? Buddhist wisdom reveals a powerful truth that can change the way you see your life forever. The moment you stop tolerating what drains your soul, your mind becomes calmer, your strength returns, and your life begins moving in a completely different direction. 1. The Buddha never wasted his energy on those who refused to wake up. One of the most powerful lessons from the life of the Gautama Buddha is that he shared wisdom with anyone who was willing to listen, but he never wasted his energy trying to force understanding on those who were not ready to awaken. Many people spend years trying to convince others to change their thinking, improve their behavior, or see the truth. They argue, explain, and repeat themselves again and again, hoping that one day the other person will finally understand. But real awakening cannot be forced. A person only changes when they choose awareness for themselves. The Buddha understood this deeply. Instead of exhausting himself trying to wake people who refused to see, he focused his energy on those who were open to learning. This lesson is powerful for modern life. When someone repeatedly rejects growth, refuses to listen, or remains attached to negativity, trying to change them will only drain your peace. Wisdom is knowing when to share your light and when to quietly step back. 2. Low-energy people will always mistake your boundaries for rejection. When you begin protecting your energy, something interesting often happens. People who are used to unlimited access to your time, attention, and emotional support may suddenly feel uncomfortable. They may wonder why you are not responding the same way anymore, why you are not always available, or why you are no longer absorbing every problem they bring to you. What really changed is not your kindness, but your awareness. You simply started noticing how much of your energy was being taken without balance. Low-energy people often depend on others to carry the emotional weight of their negativity. They complain about the same problems again and again, bring drama into simple conversations, and expect someone else to listen, comfort, and solve things for them. Over time, this pattern becomes exhausting for the person who keeps giving their attention and emotional strength. When you finally begin setting healthy boundaries, such as limiting certain conversations or protecting your time, they may see it as rejection or distance because they were used to having constant access to your energy. But boundaries are not acts of hostility. They are acts of self-respect and emotional wisdom. Buddhist teachings remind us that compassion should exist with mindfulness and balance. Caring for others does not mean sacrificing your inner peace or allowing endless negativity to disturb your mind. True compassion includes the understanding that your mental clarity and emotional stability also matter. When you create healthy limits, you are not rejecting people. You are simply protecting the calmness of your mind and the quality of your life. People who truly respect you will understand that boundaries are necessary for healthy relationships. Those who react negatively to your boundaries often reveal that they were more comfortable using your energy than respecting it. 3. Your silence is not weakness. It is where your power lives. Many people believe that strength means always responding, defending themselves, or proving others wrong. When someone criticizes them or tries to provoke them, they feel the need to react immediately. But very often, these reactions only create more conflict, more stress, and more wasted energy. Buddhist wisdom teaches that true strength is not found in constant reaction, but in the ability to remain calm and aware. Silence is often misunderstood. People sometimes think that staying quiet means you are weak, afraid, or unable to defend yourself. In reality, silence can be one of the most powerful forms of self-control. When you refuse to react to negativity, arguments, or unnecessary drama, you prevent those situations from taking control of your mind. You are choosing peace over conflict and clarity over emotional chaos. In many situations, responding to every comment or criticism only feeds the problem. Some people seek reactions because they want attention, control, or emotional engagement. When you remain calm and silent, you remove the energy that fuels the conflict. This is why silence can feel so powerful. It protects your mind from being pulled into situations that do not deserve your attention. Silence is not weakness. It is discipline. It is the ability to pause, observe, and decide whether something truly deserves your energy. When you learn this skill, you begin to move through life with much greater calmness and strength, because you are no longer controlled by every opinion, insult, or emotional situation that appears around you. 4. The company you keep is the water you swim in. One of the most powerful influences in a person's life is the environment created by the people around them. Many people underestimate how deeply their surroundings shape their thinking, their emotions, and even the direction of their life. We often believe that we are completely independent in our thoughts and decisions, but in reality, the attitudes, habits, and emotional energy of the people around us slowly begin to influence us without us even realizing it. Buddhist teachings often emphasize the importance of wise association. The Gautama Buddha frequently reminded his followers that the company a person keeps can either support their growth or quietly lead them towards suffering. When you spend time with people who are calm, thoughtful, and focused on growth, their presence naturally encourages you to think more clearly and live more mindfully. Their conversations tend to inspire reflection, patience, and wisdom. But the opposite is also true. When you constantly surround yourself with people who complain, gossip, criticize others, or live in constant negativity, your mind slowly absorbs that atmosphere. Even if you try to stay positive, the emotional environment begins to influence your mood and your thinking. Conversations filled with drama and pessimism slowly drain your mental clarity and replace peace with tension. Think of it like water surrounding a fish. The fish does not notice the water because it is always there, but that water determines the entire environment in which it lives. In the same way, the emotional atmosphere created by the people around you becomes the environment your mind lives in every day. If that environment is healthy and supportive, your mind feels lighter and more balanced. If it is filled with negativity and chaos, your mind gradually becomes tired and restless. This does not mean you must judge or reject people harshly. Buddhism teaches compassion for all beings. But compassion does not require you to place yourself in environments that constantly weaken your peace. Sometimes the wisest decision is simply to spend more time with people who encourage calmness, kindness, and growth. When you begin choosing your company more carefully, something powerful begins to happen. Your conversations become more meaningful, your thinking becomes clearer, and your emotional energy becomes more stable. Instead of feeling drained after interactions, you begin feeling encouraged and mentally refreshed. The people around you are not just companions in your life. They are part of the environment shaping your mind. When you surround yourself with peaceful and mindful individuals, your own mind naturally moves toward that same peace. And, slowly, without force, your life begins to reflect the energy of the company you keep. 5. Walking away is not failure. It is the most advanced form of self-respect. Many people grow up believing that strength means staying no matter what happens. They are taught that leaving a situation means giving up, that walking away means losing, and that enduring every hardship proves loyalty or courage. Because of this belief, many people remain in environments that slowly drain their peace. They stay in arguments that never end, relationships that constantly hurt them, and situations that quietly damage their mental and emotional health. But Buddhist wisdom invites us to see strength in a very different way. Real strength is not always about holding on. Sometimes real strength is the wisdom to recognize when holding on is causing unnecessary suffering. The moment you realize that something continuously disturbs your peace, drains your energy, or keeps your mind trapped in negativity, you begin to understand that walking away is not weakness. It is clarity. Many people fear walking away because they believe it will make them look selfish or uncaring. They worry about what others will say. They worry that people will misunderstand their intentions. But constantly sacrificing your inner peace just to maintain appearances slowly erodes your self-respect. Over time, this kind of sacrifice leaves the mind exhausted and the heart heavy. The Gautama Buddha taught that attachment to suffering often keeps people trapped in situations long after they have stopped being healthy or meaningful. When we cling to something simply because it is familiar, we allow fear to control our decisions. Walking away requires courage because it means stepping into the unknown, but it also creates the possibility for a healthier and more peaceful life. Sometimes walking away simply means refusing to continue arguments that lead nowhere. Sometimes it means creating distance from people who constantly bring negativity. Other times it means leaving environments where your growth is restricted and your peace is constantly disturbed. None of these actions are signs of defeat. They are signs that you are beginning to understand your own worth. Self-respect grows when you stop forcing yourself to remain where your soul feels heavy. When you walk away from unnecessary conflict, you protect your mental clarity. When you step away from relationships that continuously drain your spirit, you protect your emotional strength. When you remove yourself from environments that encourage negativity, you create space for peace to return. Walking away does not mean you stop caring about others. It simply means you start caring about your own well-being as well. Buddhism teaches that a peaceful mind is one of the greatest treasures a person can have. Protecting that peace sometimes requires letting go of situations that no longer support your growth. Many people spend years fighting battles that were never meant to be fought. They try harder, argue longer, and hold on tighter, believing that persistence alone will solve everything. But wisdom teaches us that not every situation requires struggle. Sometimes the most intelligent and powerful decision is simply to step back and move forward in a different direction. When you truly understand this lesson, walking away no longer feels like defeat. Instead, it feels like freedom. You begin to realize that your peace is more valuable than winning arguments, proving points, or maintaining connections that only bring suffering. And in that moment, self-respect begins to replace exhaustion, and your life starts to feel lighter and more balanced. 6. Detachment is not coldness. It is the highest act of love. Many people misunderstand the idea of detachment. When they hear the word, they imagine someone who has become distant, emotionally unavailable, or indifferent to others. They think detachment means not caring, not loving, and not feeling deeply. But in Buddhist philosophy, detachment means something completely different. Detachment is not the absence of love. It is the purification of love. When love is mixed with attachment, it often becomes heavy and painful. Attachment creates fear, control, and emotional dependence. When we become attached, we begin to believe that our happiness depends on other people behaving exactly the way we want them to behave. We start expecting constant attention, constant understanding, and constant agreement. And when those expectations are not fulfilled, frustration and suffering appear. This is why many relationships begin with warmth, but slowly become filled with tension. At first there is affection and appreciation, but gradually attachment begins to replace understanding. One person tries to control the other. Someone begins expecting too much. Someone fears losing the relationship and becomes anxious or insecure. Instead of love bringing peace, it begins creating emotional pressure. Buddhist wisdom teaches that attachment is one of the main causes of human suffering. The Gautama Buddha explained that when we cling too tightly to people, outcomes, or expectations, we create unnecessary pain for ourselves and for others. Detachment is the process of releasing this unhealthy clinging while still keeping the heart open and compassionate. Detachment allows love to exist without control. It allows relationships to breathe. When you are detached in the Buddhist sense, you care deeply about people, but you do not try to control their behavior, their choices, or their path in life. You accept that every person has their own journey, their own struggles, and their own lessons to learn. Many people believe that detachment means becoming emotionally distant, but true detachment actually creates healthier and more peaceful connections. When you are not constantly trying to control someone or expecting them to complete you emotionally, your interactions become lighter and more respectful. You give love freely instead of demanding something in return. For example, when someone you care about makes a decision that you do not fully agree with, attachment often pushes you to react strongly. You may try to change their mind, criticize their choices, or become emotionally upset. But detachment allows you to step back and recognize that their life is their responsibility. You can share your thoughts calmly, but you do not feel the need to control their path. Detachment also protects your inner peace when circumstances change. Life is constantly moving. People enter and leave our lives. Situations evolve. Expectations fail. When the mind is strongly attached, these changes feel devastating because the mind was clinging to a specific outcome. But when you practice detachment, you begin to understand that change is a natural part of life. Instead of resisting it, you learn to move with it. You appreciate people while they are present in your life without trying to imprison them with expectations. This does not make you cold. It actually makes your love more genuine. When love is free from attachment, it becomes generous and understanding. You no longer love people because you need them to behave a certain way. You love them because you recognize their humanity and their journey. Detachment also helps you avoid emotional exhaustion. Many people feel drained because they constantly carry the emotional weight of other people's problems, decisions, and behaviors. They worry endlessly about things they cannot control. They try to manage every outcome and every relationship. But detachment gently reminds us that we are not responsible for controlling the entire world around us. We are responsible for our own actions, our own intentions, and the way we respond to life. When you detach from the need to control everything, your mind becomes lighter. You stop overthinking every situation. You stop trying to force outcomes. You simply do your best and allow life to unfold naturally. In many ways, detachment is one of the most compassionate ways to live. It allows you to care for others without losing yourself. It allows you to support people without trying to dominate their lives. It allows love to exist without fear. When someone truly understands detachment, their relationships become calmer and more stable. There is less jealousy, less insecurity, and less emotional pressure. Instead of constantly demanding reassurance or control, they offer patience and understanding. The beauty of detachment is that it frees both you and the people you care about. You are free from the burden of controlling everything, and they are free to grow and evolve without constant pressure. In a world where many relationships are built on expectations and emotional dependency, practicing detachment can feel unfamiliar at first. But, with time, it becomes one of the most peaceful ways to live. You begin to realize that love does not need chains. It does not need control or constant reassurance. True love simply needs presence, kindness, and respect. When you learn the art of detachment, you are not closing your heart. You are actually opening it in a wiser and healthier way. Your love becomes lighter, your mind becomes calmer, and your relationships become more balanced. And slowly you begin to understand a powerful truth. Detachment is not the absence of love. It is the highest form of it. 7. The life you are seeking is on the other side of the energy you stop tolerating. Many people spend years searching for a better life. They want more peace, more clarity, more meaningful relationships, and a sense of calm that does not disappear every time life becomes difficult. They read books, watch motivational videos, and try different ways to improve their mindset. Yet, despite all of this effort, something inside still feels heavy. The reason is often much simpler than they realize. The life they want cannot grow because they are still tolerating the energy that slowly destroys it. Energy is invisible, but its influence is powerful. Every conversation you allow into your life, every environment you remain in, and every emotional pattern you tolerate quietly shapes the condition of your mind. Many people underestimate how deeply this affects their well-being. They focus on external success while ignoring the emotional atmosphere they live in every day. If someone spends their time surrounded by constant negativity, criticism, and emotional chaos, their mind eventually becomes exhausted. Even if they try to remain positive, the emotional pressure slowly drains their clarity. It is like trying to grow a healthy plant in polluted soil. No matter how much effort you put into watering it, the environment itself prevents growth. This is why Buddhist teachings place so much importance on awareness and wise choices in daily life. The Gautama Buddha often reminded his followers that suffering does not only come from dramatic events. Much of it comes from the small things we repeatedly allow into our lives without questioning them. Over time, these small patterns accumulate and begin shaping our mental state. Many people tolerate things that quietly damage their peace simply because they have become familiar. They tolerate constant complaining in their social circle. They tolerate disrespect in relationships. They tolerate environments that encourage stress, gossip, and emotional conflict. At first, these things seem manageable, but over time, they slowly drain a person's spirit. The mind becomes tired, not because life is impossible, but because it is constantly surrounded by energy that weakens it. One of the most powerful transformations a person can experience begins when they start paying attention to what they tolerate. This awareness is not about judging others or becoming cold toward the world. It is about recognizing what nourishes your mind and what slowly poisons it. Imagine two people living very different lives. The first person constantly stays in environments filled with tension, arguments, and negativity. Every day they listen to complaints, absorb stress, and participate in conversations that revolve around problems. Even if they try to stay calm, their mind gradually becomes restless because their emotional environment never allows peace to grow. The second person begins making small changes. They spend more time with people who value calm conversations. They limit interactions that repeatedly drain their energy. They step away from environments where negativity dominates. Slowly, their mind begins to feel lighter. The difference between these two lives is not luck or talent. The difference is simply the energy each person chooses to tolerate. Many people delay making these changes because they fear disappointing others or creating conflict. They believe that protecting their energy will make them appear distant or selfish. But Buddhist wisdom reminds us that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is necessary for a balanced life. If your mind is constantly exhausted, you cannot offer kindness, patience, or wisdom to others. But when your mind is calm and clear, your presence naturally becomes more supportive and compassionate. This is why learning to stop tolerating draining energy is not about rejecting the world. It is about creating a healthier relationship with it. Sometimes the energy we tolerate comes from external sources such as relationships, environments, or social habits. Other times it comes from our own mental patterns. Many people allow endless worry, self-criticism, and overthinking to dominate their minds. They replay past mistakes, fear future problems, and judge themselves harshly. These patterns also drain energy. They create mental noise that prevents peace from developing. When you begin noticing these patterns, you can slowly change them. Instead of feeding worry with constant attention, you learn to return your mind to the present moment. Instead of repeating harsh self-judgment, you begin practicing understanding and patience toward yourself. Every time you refuse to tolerate a negative pattern, whether it comes from your environment or your own thinking, you reclaim a small piece of your energy. And these small changes eventually create powerful transformation. Many people imagine that creating a better life requires dramatic action. They believe they must completely reinvent themselves overnight. But often the most important step is much simpler. It is the decision to stop accepting the things that quietly destroy your peace. When you remove draining energy from your life, space begins to open. Into that space comes calmness, clarity, and emotional stability. Your conversations begin to feel more meaningful. Your mind becomes less cluttered with unnecessary conflict. Your relationships become more balanced because they are built on respect rather than emotional dependence. Slowly, the life you were searching for begins to appear. You feel calmer without forcing it. You feel more focused without constantly fighting distractions. Your energy returns because it is no longer being wasted on situations that do not deserve it. This transformation does not happen instantly. It happens gradually as you become more aware of what you allow into your life. Each time you choose peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and respect over emotional exhaustion, you take another step toward the life you want. The truth is that many people are much closer to peace than they think. They do not need to chase happiness across the world. They simply need to stop allowing the things that quietly destroy it. Once you understand this, your perspective begins to change. Instead of constantly searching for something new to fix your life, you begin asking a different question. What energy am I still tolerating that no longer belongs in my life? The moment you begin answering that question honestly, your path becomes clearer. You start protecting your time, your attention, and your emotional space with greater awareness. You learn that not every conversation deserves your participation, not every argument deserves your response, and not every environment deserves your presence. As these realizations deepen, something powerful happens inside you. Your mind becomes lighter because it is no longer constantly defending itself against negativity. Your heart becomes calmer because it is no longer carrying unnecessary emotional weight. And gradually you begin to see a simple but powerful truth. The life you were seeking was never far away. It was waiting on the other side of the energy you finally chose to stop tolerating. 8. Protecting your energy is the first step toward inner freedom. There comes a moment in a person's life when they begin to realize that their greatest battles are not always external. They are not always about money, success, or competition with others. Many of the deepest struggles happen quietly within the mind. A person may appear calm on the outside while internally feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, and emotionally drained. Often, the reason for this exhaustion is not simply the challenges of life, but the constant loss of personal energy. Energy is the invisible force behind everything we experience. It fuels our thoughts, shapes our emotions, and determines how we respond to the world around us. When a person's energy is strong and balanced, even difficult situations can be handled with calmness and clarity. But when that energy is constantly drained, even small problems begin to feel overwhelming. Many people unknowingly give away their energy every day. They give it to unnecessary arguments, to constant worry about what others think, to environments filled with negativity, and to relationships that repeatedly disturb their peace. Over time, this pattern becomes normal. People become so used to feeling mentally tired that they begin to believe that exhaustion is simply part of life. However, Buddhist wisdom invites us to look deeper into this experience. The teachings associated with the Gautama Buddha remind us that suffering often arises not only from life's events, but from how we relate to them. When we constantly allow situations to disturb our inner balance, we unknowingly create more suffering than necessary. Protecting your energy is not about isolating yourself from the world. It is about becoming more conscious of what you allow to occupy your mind and heart. Every conversation you participate in, every emotional reaction you engage in, and every thought you repeat consumes a portion of your inner strength. When these things are chosen wisely, they support your well-being. When they are allowed carelessly, they gradually weaken it. One of the most common ways people lose energy is through constant emotional reactions. When someone criticizes them, they immediately feel the need to defend themselves. When someone behaves unfairly, they replay the situation in their mind again and again. When life does not unfold according to their expectations, they worry endlessly about the future. These reactions seem natural, but they consume tremendous mental energy. Buddhist mindfulness teaches that awareness creates freedom. The moment you begin observing your reactions, instead of immediately being controlled by them, you gain the ability to respond differently. Instead of allowing every opinion or situation to disturb your peace, you learn to pause, breathe, and decide whether something truly deserves your attention. This small shift can completely transform the way you experience life. Instead of reacting impulsively, you begin responding thoughtfully. Instead of carrying every emotional burden placed in front of you, you begin recognizing which burdens actually belong to you and which ones do not. Protecting your energy also involves becoming more selective about the environments you remain in. Many people stay in environments that continuously drain their spirit simply because those environments feel familiar. They may stay in social circles where gossip and negativity dominate every conversation. They may stay in relationships where respect and understanding are rarely present. They may stay in routines that leave them feeling constantly overwhelmed. At first, these situations may not seem extreme, but over time they slowly weaken a person's emotional stability. The mind becomes restless, patience becomes shorter, and peace becomes harder to maintain. Protecting your energy sometimes requires stepping away from environments that repeatedly disturb your inner balance. This does not mean judging others harshly. Buddhist compassion encourages understanding toward everyone's struggles and imperfections. But compassion does not require sacrificing your peace indefinitely. You can wish others well while still choosing a healthier environment for yourself. Another important source of energy loss comes from the way people treat themselves internally. Many individuals constantly criticize themselves for past mistakes or perceived failures. They replay embarrassing moments, regret old decisions, and compare themselves to others. These thoughts may appear harmless, but they create a continuous stream of negative energy within the mind. Over time, this inner criticism becomes exhausting. The mind begins to feel like a battlefield where every mistake is repeatedly punished. Protecting your energy also means learning to treat yourself with patience and understanding. Instead of endlessly criticizing yourself, you begin recognizing that growth happens through awareness and learning, not through constant self-judgment. When you practice this kind of self-understanding, the mind gradually becomes calmer. Instead of fighting yourself internally, you begin supporting your own growth. Protecting your energy also changes the way you approach relationships. Instead of seeking approval from everyone around you, you begin valuing authenticity and mutual respect. You become less interested in impressing people who do not appreciate you and more focused on building connections that feel balanced and genuine. Healthy relationships do not constantly drain your emotional strength. They support your peace, encourage your growth, and allow you to be yourself without fear. When you begin protecting your energy, these kinds of relationships naturally become more important to you. At the same time, you become less willing to remain in situations where your presence is repeatedly undervalued. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who refuse to see it. Instead of exhausting yourself, seeking validation, you invest your energy in people and activities that nourish your spirit. This shift may feel uncomfortable at first. People who were used to unlimited access to your energy may question your changes. They may interpret your new boundaries as distance or rejection. But protecting your energy is not about rejecting others. It is about respecting yourself. The more consistently you protect your energy, the more your mind begins to experience something remarkable: inner freedom. Inner freedom is the state where your peace is no longer controlled by every external situation. It is the ability to remain calm even when others behave unpredictably. It is the confidence that comes from knowing that your well-being does not depend on constant approval or perfect circumstances. When your energy is protected, your thoughts become clearer, your decisions become wiser. You are no longer reacting impulsively to every emotional situation around you. This does not mean life becomes free of challenges. Difficult moments will still appear. People will still misunderstand you at times. Unexpected situations will still occur, but your relationship with these experiences changes. Instead of being overwhelmed by them, you approach them with calm awareness. Instead of allowing every situation to disturb your inner balance, you respond with patience and clarity. And slowly, you begin to notice that your mind feels lighter. Your emotional reactions become more balanced. The constant exhaustion that once followed you begins to fade. This is the quiet power of protecting your energy. The more you practice it, the more you realize that peace is not something you must chase endlessly. It is something that naturally appears when you stop allowing your energy to be consumed by things that do not deserve it. And in that realization, a deeper truth becomes clear. The path toward inner freedom does not begin by changing the entire world around you. It begins by learning how to protect the energy within you. 9. When you stop chasing energy, the right life begins to find you. Many people spend most of their lives chasing things they believe will finally bring them peace. They chase approval, recognition, relationships, success, and validation from others. They believe that if they just try a little harder, prove themselves a little more, or hold on a little longer, life will finally begin to feel calm and fulfilling. Yet, despite all the effort, something still feels incomplete. The mind remains restless, the heart remains heavy, and the sense of peace they are searching for never fully arrives. One of the quiet truths revealed in Buddhist wisdom is that chasing energy often leads to exhaustion rather than fulfillment. When a person constantly runs after acceptance, attention, or approval, they slowly give away the very thing that makes them powerful, their inner balance. Instead of living from a place of calm awareness, they begin living from a place of need. Every interaction becomes a search for reassurance. Every relationship becomes a test of whether they are valued enough. This way of living quietly drains the spirit. The more someone chases validation from the outside world, the more fragile their peace becomes. Their happiness rises and falls depending on how others treat them. If someone appreciates them, they feel uplifted. If someone ignores them, they feel rejected. If circumstances change unexpectedly, their emotional stability begins to shake. The Gautama Buddha explained that much of human suffering comes from this constant craving. Craving is the endless desire for things to be different from how they are in the present moment. It is the belief that happiness exists somewhere outside ourselves and must be chased or captured before we can finally feel satisfied. When people live in this state of craving, their mind rarely experiences rest. Even when they achieve something they once desired, the satisfaction quickly fades and a new desire appears. This endless cycle creates a life of constant pursuit but very little peace. However, something remarkable begins to happen when a person slowly stops chasing energy from the outside world. Instead of constantly seeking attention, approval, or reassurance, they begin focusing on their inner stability. They begin asking themselves a different question. Instead of asking, "Who will appreciate me?" they ask, "Am I living in a way that aligns with my values?" Instead of asking, "Who will stay in my life?" they ask, "Am I becoming the kind of person who lives with clarity and peace?" This shift may appear small, but it completely transforms the direction of a person's life. When you stop chasing energy, your attention returns to the present moment. You begin investing your time in activities that strengthen your mind rather than weaken it. You spend more time cultivating patience, awareness, and emotional balance. Your interactions with others also begin to change. Instead of approaching relationships with hidden expectations, you begin approaching them with openness and authenticity. You are no longer trying to extract validation from every conversation. You are simply sharing presence and understanding. Interestingly, this change often attracts healthier connections into your life. When someone is no longer desperate for approval, their presence becomes calmer and more grounded. People sense this stability. Conversations become more genuine because they are not driven by emotional need. Many people are surprised by this transformation. For years, they believed that the way to receive attention and respect was by constantly proving themselves. But when they finally stop chasing validation, they discover that respect begins appearing naturally. This happens because calm confidence has a powerful influence. A person who is not constantly seeking approval carries a different kind of energy. Their actions are guided by clarity rather than insecurity. They listen more carefully, they react less impulsively, they do not feel the need to argue with every opinion or defend every criticism. Instead, they move through life with quiet awareness. Another important change occurs in how challenges are experienced. When someone is constantly chasing approval, criticism feels devastating. A negative comment can disturb their thoughts for days. But when a person stops seeking validation from every direction, criticism loses much of its power. They begin seeing feedback more clearly. Some criticism may contain useful insight, while other criticism simply reflects another person's emotions or misunderstandings. Instead of reacting defensively, they respond thoughtfully. This ability to remain calm in the face of judgment creates emotional freedom. When you stop chasing energy, you also become more selective about where your attention goes. You begin noticing how certain conversations drain your mind while others nourish it. You begin recognizing which environments encourage growth and which ones trap you in negativity. This awareness naturally changes your habits. You may choose quieter environments where your mind can breathe. You may seek conversations that inspire reflection rather than constant complaint. You may spend more time learning, creating, or developing skills that strengthen your sense of purpose. These choices gradually reshape your life. Instead of constantly reacting to the emotional atmosphere around you, you begin creating an atmosphere that supports your peace. This is one of the most powerful shifts a person can experience. Many people believe they must force their life into a better direction through endless effort. But often the greatest transformation happens when effort becomes balanced with awareness. When you stop chasing everything, you begin allowing the right things to appear naturally. Healthy relationships become easier to recognize because you are no longer blinded by emotional need. Opportunities become clearer because your mind is not overwhelmed by constant distraction. Even your inner dialogue begins to change. Instead of constantly questioning your worth, you begin trusting your ability to navigate life with patience and wisdom. This quiet confidence grows stronger each time you choose awareness over reaction. It grows each time you refuse to chase approval that weakens your peace. It grows each time you return your attention to the present moment instead of chasing validation in the future. Over time, something beautiful begins to happen. Your life becomes less chaotic and more intentional. You begin moving through situations with greater calmness. Decisions become easier because they are guided by clarity rather than emotional pressure. The people who enter your life begin reflecting this new stability. They are more likely to respect your time, appreciate your presence, and support your growth. All of this begins with one simple shift: the decision to stop chasing energy. When you stop chasing validation, you protect your dignity. When you stop chasing attention, you strengthen your presence. When you stop chasing approval, you reclaim your inner freedom. Life begins responding differently to someone who is not desperately running after it, because calmness creates space. And in that space, the right people, the right opportunities, and the right experiences often begin appearing naturally. This is one of the most peaceful truths a person can discover. The life you were trying so hard to chase may have been waiting for the moment you finally slowed down. Waiting for the moment you stopped searching for energy in the outside world and began living from the quiet strength within. 10. The moment you value your energy, your entire life begins to change. There is a moment that eventually arrives in many people's lives when they begin to see something clearly that they had overlooked for years. It is the realization that much of their exhaustion did not come from life itself, but from how freely they allowed their energy to be taken. They remember countless situations where they kept giving attention to arguments that solved nothing, worrying about opinions that never truly mattered, and staying connected to environments that quietly drained their spirit. When they look back honestly, they begin to see a simple truth that had been hidden in plain sight. Their energy was their most valuable resource, yet they had been giving it away without awareness. Energy is the foundation of everything we experience. It shapes the way we think, the way we respond to challenges, and the way we interact with others. When a person's energy is balanced and protected, even difficult circumstances can be faced with calmness and patience. But when that energy is constantly scattered across unnecessary worries, emotional conflicts, and draining environments, the mind begins to feel heavy. The smallest inconvenience can feel overwhelming because the mind no longer has the strength to respond clearly. Many people reach a point where they finally begin questioning this pattern. They start asking themselves why they feel so tired even when nothing dramatic has happened. They begin noticing that certain conversations leave them mentally exhausted, while others leave them feeling calm and refreshed. Slowly, awareness begins to grow. They realize that the quality of their life is deeply connected to the way their energy is being used. Buddhist wisdom has long emphasized the importance of understanding this relationship. The teachings associated with the Gautama Buddha repeatedly remind us that suffering often arises when the mind becomes entangled in unnecessary reactions and attachments. When we give our attention to every disturbance that appears in front of us, we allow the external world to control our inner peace. Valuing your energy means recognizing that not everything deserves your reaction. It means understanding that every argument you engage in, every negative thought you repeat, and every emotional burden you carry consumes a portion of your mental strength. When these reactions happen occasionally, the mind can recover, but when they happen constantly, the mind begins to feel overwhelmed. Many people spend years reacting automatically to whatever appears around them. If someone criticizes them, they immediately defend themselves. If someone behaves unfairly, they replay the situation in their mind for hours or even days. If life presents uncertainty, they fill their thoughts with worry about every possible outcome. These reactions feel natural because they are familiar, but they quietly drain enormous amounts of energy. The moment a person begins valuing their energy, something important begins to change. They start noticing these patterns instead of blindly following them. Instead of reacting immediately to every situation, they pause and ask themselves whether the situation truly deserves their attention. Sometimes they choose to respond calmly. Other times they choose to remain silent and move forward without engaging. This shift may seem small, but it has a powerful effect on the mind. Instead of being pulled in every direction by external circumstances, the person begins developing stability within themselves. They no longer feel the need to prove themselves in every conversation or defend their opinions against every disagreement. This awareness also changes the way they approach relationships. Many people give enormous amounts of energy trying to maintain connections that do not bring balance or respect into their lives. They tolerate constant negativity because they fear losing the relationship. They keep explaining themselves to people who are not truly listening. They continue investing time and emotional strength into situations that repeatedly leave them feeling drained. But when a person begins valuing their energy, they start noticing these patterns more clearly. They realize that healthy relationships should not constantly exhaust their spirit. Instead, healthy connections bring encouragement, understanding, and mutual respect. This realization does not mean they suddenly reject everyone who disagrees with them. Buddhism encourages compassion and patience toward others, but compassion does not require sacrificing your peace indefinitely. When someone consistently disturbs your emotional balance, valuing your energy may simply mean creating healthier distance. Another transformation begins to appear in the way a person relates to their own thoughts. Many individuals spend enormous amounts of energy fighting with themselves internally. They replay past mistakes repeatedly, criticize themselves harshly, and compare their lives to others. This constant inner conflict quietly consumes mental strength. When someone begins valuing their energy, they also begin changing the way they speak to themselves. Instead of repeating endless self-criticism, they start practicing patience and understanding toward their own growth. They recognize that mistakes are part of learning rather than evidence of failure. This change brings a surprising sense of relief. The mind begins to feel lighter because it is no longer trapped in constant self-judgment. Instead of fighting themselves, they begin supporting their own progress. Valuing your energy also transforms the way you experience everyday situations. When your energy is scattered across dozens of worries and conflicts, even small challenges feel overwhelming. But when your energy is focused and protected, your mind becomes clearer. Problems that once felt impossible begin to appear manageable. Conversations become calmer because you are no longer reacting impulsively. Decisions become easier because your thoughts are not clouded by constant emotional noise. One of the most beautiful aspects of valuing your energy is the quiet confidence it creates. When you know that your peace does not depend on controlling everyone around you, you begin moving through life with greater stability. You no longer feel desperate for approval or reassurance. Your sense of worth becomes rooted in your awareness rather than in other people's opinions. This calm confidence changes how others respond to you as well. People often feel more comfortable around someone who is emotionally balanced. They sense that the person is not constantly seeking validation or reacting impulsively. Conversations become more respectful because your presence communicates quiet strength. At the same time, valuing your energy naturally filters out situations that do not align with your peace. You may find yourself spending less time in environments filled with negativity. You may lose interest in arguments that once consumed your attention. You may choose activities that nourish your mind instead of exhausting it. These changes happen gradually, but their impact is profound. Over time, your life begins to feel more intentional and less chaotic. Instead of constantly reacting to the world, you begin responding with awareness. Instead of chasing every opportunity for validation, you begin investing energy in what truly matters. Instead of feeling drained by the emotional atmosphere around you, you begin creating an atmosphere that supports your calmness. And slowly, you realize something powerful. Your life did not need endless fixing. It simply needed your awareness. The moment you began valuing your energy, your thoughts became clearer. Your relationships became healthier. Your peace became stronger. And your entire life began to move in a different direction. A direction guided not by exhaustion or emotional chaos, but by calm understanding. Because the truth is simple. The moment you value your energy, you begin valuing your life itself. 11. The peace you protect today becomes the life you live tomorrow. There comes a moment in many people's lives when they begin to notice something deeply important about the way their days unfold. They realize that the quality of their life is not only shaped by the big events that happen once in a while, but by the small emotional decisions they make every single day. Every reaction, every conversation, every thought they repeat becomes part of the environment their mind lives in. When these choices are made without awareness, life can slowly become filled with tension and exhaustion. But when a person begins protecting their inner peace consciously, the entire direction of their life begins to shift. Peace is often misunderstood. Many people believe peace will arrive when their problems disappear, when their circumstances become perfect, or when everyone around them finally behaves the way they expect. But Buddhist wisdom explains something very different. Peace does not come from controlling the world outside of you. It comes from learning how to protect the world within you. The teachings connected to the Gautama Buddha repeatedly emphasize that the mind creates much of the suffering it experiences. When the mind constantly reacts to every disturbance, it becomes restless and unstable. Every argument, every criticism, and every disappointment begins to feel larger than it truly is. Over time, this constant reaction creates a life that feels heavy and emotionally exhausting. Many people live this way without even realizing it. They wake up already thinking about problems that might happen later in the day. They replay conversations from the past, imagining what they should have said differently. They worry about how others perceive them. By the time the day ends, their mind feels drained even though nothing truly catastrophic happened. What they are experiencing is the quiet loss of peace through hundreds of small emotional reactions. Protecting your peace begins with recognizing this pattern. It begins with the understanding that not every thought deserves your attention, and not every situation deserves your emotional energy. When you become aware of this, you start making different choices. Instead of reacting instantly to criticism, you pause and consider whether the opinion truly matters. Instead of replaying past mistakes repeatedly, you remind yourself that the past cannot be changed and that learning is more useful than regret. Instead of worrying endlessly about uncertain outcomes, you bring your attention back to the present moment where your actions actually have power. Each time you make one of these choices, you protect a small portion of your peace. At first, the difference may feel subtle. One calmer conversation, one moment where you choose silence instead of argument, one moment where you let go of a thought that would have once disturbed your mind for hours. But these small decisions begin to accumulate. Day after day, they slowly reshape the atmosphere of your life. Many people underestimate how powerful these small changes are. They imagine that transformation requires dramatic events or radical decisions. But often, the most meaningful transformation begins quietly. It begins when a person simply decides that their peace is too valuable to be sacrificed unnecessarily. Protecting your peace also changes how you experience relationships. Instead of constantly trying to control how others behave, you begin focusing on your own responses. When someone acts with negativity or anger, you recognize that their behavior reflects their state of mind rather than your worth. This awareness allows you to remain calm instead of reacting emotionally. You may still communicate your thoughts clearly, but you no longer feel the need to fight every disagreement. You understand that not every battle deserves to be fought. This shift can feel incredibly freeing. For many years, you may have believed that strength meant proving yourself in every argument and defending your opinions against every challenge. But slowly, you realize that true strength often appears as calmness. Calmness allows you to see situations more clearly. Calmness allows you to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Calmness allows you to protect your energy instead of scattering it across endless emotional conflicts. As you continue protecting your peace, another powerful change begins to appear. You become more aware of the environments you place yourself in. Certain environments support peace. They encourage patience, thoughtful conversations, and emotional balance. Other environments constantly stimulate stress, competition, and negativity. When you begin valuing your peace, you naturally start spending more time in environments that nourish your mind. This does not mean you avoid all difficulties. Life will always present challenges, but you become more conscious about the emotional atmosphere you allow to surround you. You may choose to limit time spent in conversations that revolve around constant complaints. You may distance yourself from environments where negativity dominates every interaction. Instead, you seek spaces where calmness and respect are present. These choices gradually change how your mind feels each day. Instead of waking up with tension already filling your thoughts, you begin experiencing moments of quiet clarity. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by every challenge, you begin approaching problems with patience. Instead of carrying emotional weight from every conversation, you begin leaving many situations behind without carrying them in your mind. This transformation does not happen because the world suddenly became perfect. It happens because you learn to protect your inner environment. Another important aspect of protecting peace is learning how to forgive both yourself and others. Many people carry emotional wounds for years. They replay moments where someone hurt them or situations where they believe they failed. These memories remain active in the mind, constantly reopening old emotions. Forgiveness does not mean pretending that those experiences never happened. It means releasing the emotional burden they continue to carry. When you forgive someone, you are not approving of their actions. You are simply choosing not to allow that memory to control your emotional state any longer. When you forgive yourself, you are acknowledging that growth is part of being human. This release creates enormous relief for the mind. Energy that was previously trapped in resentment or regret becomes available for awareness and growth. Over time, you begin to notice that your thoughts are becoming quieter. Your reactions become slower and more thoughtful. Situations that once disturbed you deeply now pass through your mind with much less impact. This is the natural result of protecting your peace consistently. And slowly, you realize something profound about the way life works. The peace you protect today becomes the life you experience tomorrow. Every calm response you choose today shapes the emotional habits your mind will carry into the future. Every unnecessary conflict you avoid today prevents stress from accumulating in your life tomorrow. Every moment of awareness you practice today strengthens the stability of your mind in the years ahead. Life does not suddenly transform in a single moment. It transforms through the quiet accumulation of these small choices. The choice to remain calm, the choice to let go of unnecessary worry, the choice to protect your energy from situations that drain it. When these choices become part of your daily life, the overall atmosphere of your existence changes. Your mind becomes a place of clarity rather than constant noise. Your relationships become calmer because they are no longer fueled by impulsive reactions. Your decisions become wiser because they are guided by awareness instead of emotional pressure. And eventually, you begin living in a way that once seemed impossible. You live with peace that does not disappear every time life becomes uncertain. You live with confidence that does not depend on constant approval. You live with emotional balance that remains steady even when circumstances change. This is the quiet reward of protecting your peace. It is not something you achieve once and then forget. It is something you practice every day through awareness. And each day you choose to protect it, your life moves closer to the calm and meaningful existence you once believed was out of reach. Because in the end, the peace you protect today does not remain only in this moment. It becomes the foundation of the life you will live tomorrow. 12. The freedom you seek begins when you stop letting everything touch your mind. Many people move through life believing that freedom means having complete control over everything around them. They imagine that if their circumstances improve, if people behave the way they hope, or if problems finally disappear, they will experience lasting peace. Yet even when some of these desires are fulfilled, the mind often remains restless. New worries appear, new conflicts arise, and the sense of freedom they were searching for still feels distant. The deeper truth revealed through Buddhist wisdom is that freedom does not come from controlling the outside world. It comes from learning how to protect the mind from being disturbed by everything that happens within that world. When a person begins to understand this, their entire perspective begins to change. Most people allow almost every situation to enter their mind and take control of their emotions. A careless comment from someone else can remain in their thoughts for hours. A disagreement can replay in their mind long after the conversation ends. A mistake from the past can continue creating regret years later. In this way, the mind becomes crowded with unnecessary emotional noise. The teachings associated with the Gautama Buddha explain that much of this suffering is created not by events themselves, but by the way the mind clings to them. When the mind repeatedly holds on to criticism, fear, anger, or regret, it magnifies those experiences far beyond their original moment. Imagine a calm lake. When a stone is thrown into the water, ripples appear for a short time before the surface becomes calm again. But if stones are thrown continuously, the water never has the chance to settle. Many people live with a mind that feels like that lake, constantly disturbed by stones. Every negative comment becomes another ripple. Every worry about the future becomes another disturbance. Every memory from the past becomes another stone thrown into the water. Over time, the mind loses its natural calmness because it is never allowed to settle. Freedom begins when a person learns to stop throwing so many stones into their own mind. This does not mean ignoring reality or pretending that challenges do not exist. Life will always contain moments of difficulty. People will misunderstand you, plans will change unexpectedly, and situations will not always unfold the way you hoped. But the difference between suffering and freedom often lies in how long the mind continues carrying those moments. A person who allows every event to control their thoughts remains emotionally tied to each disturbance. They replay the moment repeatedly, analyzing every detail and imagining what they could have done differently. This mental habit drains enormous energy and prevents the mind from experiencing peace. When someone begins practicing awareness, however, they start recognizing that not every thought deserves to be entertained. A criticism may appear in the mind, but instead of replaying it endlessly, they observe it and allow it to pass. A mistake may arise in memory, but instead of punishing themselves repeatedly, they learn from it and move forward. An uncertain future may create worry, but instead of feeding that worry continuously, they return their attention to the present moment, where their actions actually have influence. Each time a person makes one of these choices, they loosen the grip that external events have on their inner peace. This practice requires patience, because the mind has often spent years developing the habit of reacting automatically. But over time, awareness begins to grow stronger. The mind starts recognizing when it is about to become trapped in unnecessary emotional loops. Instead of immediately reacting, it pauses. Instead of instantly believing every thought, it questions whether the thought is truly useful. This pause creates space, and within that space, freedom begins to grow. One of the most important aspects of this freedom is learning that not every opinion deserves a place in your mind. Many people spend tremendous energy worrying about how they are perceived by others. They analyze conversations repeatedly, wondering whether they said the right thing or whether someone misunderstood them. They fear criticism and feel deeply disturbed when someone disapproves of them. But when you begin understanding the nature of the mind, you realize that opinions are simply reflections of another person's perspective. They are shaped by that person's experiences, emotions, and beliefs. They are not absolute truths about who you are. When you stop allowing every opinion to define your self-worth, an enormous amount of emotional pressure disappears. You become more comfortable expressing your thoughts honestly. You become less afraid of disagreement. You become more focused on living according to your values rather than constantly seeking approval. This shift creates a new level of freedom within relationships as well. Instead of feeling responsible for controlling how others feel about you, you accept that people will form their own impressions regardless of your efforts. Some will appreciate you, others may misunderstand you, and some may simply see the world differently. When you stop trying to manage every perception, your mind becomes much lighter. You can interact with others naturally, without the constant burden of proving yourself. Another powerful aspect of freedom arises when you learn to release the past. Many individuals remain emotionally tied to experiences that happened years earlier. They remember moments when someone hurt them or when they made a decision they regret. Even though those moments exist only as memories now, the mind continues reliving them. Buddhist teachings remind us that the past exists only as a mental image in the present moment. When we replay those images repeatedly, we are not changing the past. We are simply recreating the emotional experience again and again. Freedom begins when you recognize that holding on to these memories does not protect you or improve the situation. Instead, it keeps the mind trapped in cycles of regret and resentment. Letting go does not mean pretending those experiences never happened. It means choosing not to carry their emotional weight indefinitely. When you release the past in this way, the mind gains enormous space. Energy that was previously trapped in old memories becomes available for awareness and growth. You begin noticing more of what is happening around you in the present moment. Conversations become more meaningful because your attention is not divided by memories replaying in the background. Even simple experiences begin to feel richer because the mind is no longer crowded with unnecessary thoughts. Over time, this practice leads to a profound realization. Freedom is not something that must be chased across the world. It is something that grows quietly inside the mind when we stop allowing every event, every opinion, and every memory to control our emotional state. When your mind becomes less reactive, life begins to feel very different. Challenges still appear, but they do not dominate your thoughts for days. Criticism may still occur, but it does not shake your sense of stability. Unexpected situations may still arise, but you approach them with calmness rather than panic. The mind becomes more like that calm lake again. Stones may still touch the surface from time to time, but the water returns to stillness quickly. And in that stillness, something beautiful becomes possible. Clarity appears. Wisdom grows. Compassion becomes easier because your mind is no longer overwhelmed by its own reactions. This is the quiet freedom that Buddhist teachings point toward. A freedom not dependent on perfect circumstances. A freedom not dependent on controlling every situation. A freedom that comes from protecting the mind from unnecessary disturbance. When you truly understand this, your relationship with life begins to change. You stop trying to control everything that happens. You stop believing every thought that appears. You stop allowing every opinion to enter your heart. And slowly you begin living with a sense of peace that once felt impossible, because the freedom you were searching for was never hidden somewhere far away. It was waiting for the moment you learned how to guard the doorway of your mind. And once you learn that skill, your life begins to feel lighter, calmer, and deeply free. 13. The strongest person is the one who guards their mind. There is a quiet misunderstanding that exists in the way many people think about strength. Society often teaches that strength means dominance, constant activity, or the ability to push through every challenge without pause. People imagine strength as something loud and visible. They think it appears in arguments won, achievements displayed, or the ability to endure endless pressure without showing weakness. Yet when we look closely at the lives of those who appear strong on the outside, we often notice something very different happening inside their minds. Many of them are exhausted. Their thoughts are constantly racing. Their emotions react quickly to criticism, disagreement, and uncertainty. Even though they appear confident in public, their inner world feels unstable. This happens because external strength without inner awareness cannot create lasting peace. Buddhist teachings present a very different understanding of strength. The wisdom associated with the Gautama Buddha reveals that the strongest person is not the one who controls others, but the one who has learned to guard their own mind. A guarded mind does not mean a closed or fearful mind. It means a mind that is aware of what it allows inside. Most people allow their mind to become an open doorway through which everything enters without question. Every opinion, every criticism, every worry, and every distraction is welcomed into their thoughts. Once these things enter, they begin influencing emotions and decisions. When the mind is constantly absorbing these disturbances, it gradually loses its clarity. Guarding the mind begins with understanding how powerful attention truly is. Wherever attention goes, energy follows. If attention is constantly directed toward conflict, negativity, and fear, the mind becomes filled with those qualities. But when attention is directed toward awareness, patience, and understanding, the mind begins to reflect those qualities instead. This is why guarding the mind is not about suppressing thoughts or avoiding reality. It is about developing the ability to notice what is entering your mental space and deciding whether it deserves to remain there. Imagine standing at the entrance of a peaceful garden. If the gate remains open without any awareness, anyone can walk in and disturb the space. Some visitors may bring kindness and wisdom, but others may bring chaos and destruction. Without a gatekeeper, the garden cannot remain peaceful. The mind works in a similar way. Thoughts, opinions, and emotional reactions constantly appear at the entrance of awareness. When there is no mindfulness, they enter freely and begin shaping the emotional atmosphere inside. But when a person becomes aware, they begin acting like the gatekeeper of their own mind. They notice when anger tries to enter. They notice when fear tries to dominate their thoughts. They notice when endless worry attempts to occupy their attention. Instead of immediately accepting these mental visitors, they pause and observe. This simple act of observation changes everything. When a person observes a thought instead of instantly believing it, the thought loses some of its power. It becomes something temporary rather than something controlling. For example, imagine someone criticizing you. Without awareness, the criticism immediately enters the mind and begins creating emotional reaction. The mind may replay the comment repeatedly, analyzing what it means and how it affects your identity. But when the mind is guarded, the process becomes different. The comment still appears, but instead of being accepted automatically, it is observed. Is the criticism useful? Does it contain insight that can help improve something? Or is it simply the expression of another person's frustration or misunderstanding? By asking these questions, the mind remains calm and balanced. Instead of reacting impulsively, it responds with clarity. Guarding the mind also transforms the way a person experiences uncertainty. Many individuals spend enormous energy worrying about events that have not yet happened. They imagine negative outcomes, create scenarios in their thoughts, and prepare emotionally for problems that may never occur. This habit of worry drains tremendous mental energy. It keeps the mind trapped in future possibilities rather than present awareness. When someone learns to guard their mind, they begin recognizing when worry tries to take control. Instead of allowing those thoughts to multiply endlessly, they gently return their attention to what is actually happening in the present moment. This does not mean ignoring responsibility or planning for the future. It simply means refusing to let imagined fears dominate the mind. The same principle applies to memories from the past. Many people carry emotional wounds from earlier experiences. They replay moments of embarrassment, regret, or betrayal long after those events have passed. Each time they revisit those memories, the emotional pain is recreated. Guarding the mind allows a person to notice when this pattern begins. Instead of following the memory deeper into regret or resentment, they acknowledge it and then return to the present moment. This does not erase the past, but it prevents the past from continuously disturbing the present. Another important aspect of guarding the mind involves recognizing how easily emotions can spread through social environments. Human beings are naturally influenced by the emotional atmosphere around them. When someone enters a room filled with tension or anger, they often begin feeling uneasy, even if the situation does not involve them directly. Because of this, the people and environments we spend time with have a powerful impact on our mental state. Guarding the mind includes being aware of these influences. It means noticing when certain conversations repeatedly create negativity. It means recognizing when certain environments encourage stress rather than calmness. This awareness does not require rejecting others harshly. Buddhist teachings emphasize compassion toward everyone, but compassion does not mean allowing every emotional atmosphere to dominate your inner world. Sometimes guarding the mind simply means stepping away from environments that repeatedly disturb your peace. It means choosing conversations that inspire understanding instead of constant complaint. It means spending time in places where the mind can breathe rather than constantly reacting. Over time, this practice creates profound stability. The mind becomes less reactive because it is no longer overwhelmed by every disturbance. Emotions still appear, but they move through awareness more gently. Challenges still occur, but they are approached with patience rather than panic. One of the most beautiful results of guarding the mind is the sense of quiet confidence it creates. When a person knows that their peace does not depend on controlling everyone around them, they begin moving through life with greater calmness. They no longer feel the need to prove themselves in every situation. They do not feel compelled to win every argument or respond to every criticism. Instead, they act according to their understanding and allow others to form their own opinions. This kind of confidence is very different from arrogance. Arrogance tries to dominate others in order to feel superior. True confidence simply remains stable without needing constant validation. When the mind is guarded, this stability grows naturally. The person becomes less influenced by praise and less disturbed by blame. They remain aware of both, but neither one controls their identity. This balanced state allows wisdom to develop more easily. Instead of reacting emotionally to every situation, they observe patterns and respond thoughtfully. Their decisions become clearer because their mind is not clouded by constant emotional turbulence. Eventually, a deep realization begins to form. Strength does not come from forcing the world to behave according to your expectations. Strength comes from understanding your own mind and protecting it from unnecessary disturbance. Once this understanding becomes part of daily life, everything begins to feel different. The mind becomes quieter. Emotions become more balanced. Situations that once felt overwhelming begin to feel manageable. And through this quiet stability, a new form of strength appears. A strength that does not need to shout. A strength that does not need to dominate. A strength that simply remains calm and aware while the world continues moving around it. This is the strength of a person who has learned to guard their mind. And once that skill is developed, it becomes one of the most powerful forms of freedom a human being can experience. 14. The energy you refuse today creates the peace you live tomorrow. Many people spend years searching for peace without realizing that peace is not something that appears suddenly one day. It is something that grows slowly through the decisions we make every single day. Every conversation we participate in, every emotional reaction we allow to take control of our mind, and every environment we remain in quietly shapes the condition of our inner world. When we are not aware of this process, we often continue allowing things into our lives that slowly drain our energy. Over time, this constant loss of energy creates a feeling of exhaustion that many people struggle to explain. A person may look at their life and believe that their stress is caused by work, responsibilities, or the challenges of daily life. While these factors can certainly contribute to pressure, they are not always the true source of inner unrest. Often the deeper cause is the energy that a person continues tolerating long after it has stopped being healthy for their mind. Buddhist wisdom has long emphasized the importance of understanding this subtle but powerful dynamic. The teachings associated with the Gautama Buddha repeatedly remind us that suffering often grows from the attachments and habits we maintain without awareness. When we continue allowing negative influences to occupy our mind, those influences begin shaping our emotional state. Many people tolerate energy that weakens their peace simply because it has become familiar. They stay in conversations where complaints dominate every moment. They remain in relationships where respect is rarely present. They accept environments where tension, criticism, and emotional conflict constantly appear. At first, these situations may seem manageable, but over time they begin draining the mind's natural calmness. The mind is not designed to carry endless emotional burdens. When a person repeatedly absorbs negativity, the mind gradually becomes overwhelmed. Patience becomes shorter. Small problems begin to feel larger than they actually are. The emotional stability that once existed slowly fades. But something remarkable begins to happen the moment a person decides to stop accepting certain forms of energy in their life. This decision does not require dramatic confrontation or harsh rejection of others. Instead, it begins with quiet awareness. A person starts paying attention to how different environments and interactions affect their inner state. They begin noticing which conversations leave them feeling calm and thoughtful. They begin noticing which situations consistently leave them feeling drained or tense. This awareness creates a new level of clarity. Instead of automatically participating in every emotional situation, the person begins making choices. Sometimes the choice is to remain silent instead of engaging in an argument that will solve nothing. Sometimes the choice is to limit time spent in environments where negativity constantly dominates. Sometimes the choice is simply to step back from relationships that repeatedly disturb inner balance. Each of these choices may appear small in the moment, but together they begin reshaping the emotional atmosphere of life. When a person stops accepting energy that drains their spirit, something important becomes possible. Space. Space in the mind allows calmness to grow. Space in the mind allows clarity to return. Space in the mind allows wisdom to develop. Many people never experience this space because their mind is constantly filled with reactions, worries, and emotional noise. They move from one disturbance to another without pause, leaving little room for reflection. But when you begin refusing certain forms of draining energy, the mind slowly becomes quieter. This quietness does not mean life becomes empty or disconnected. In fact, it often creates the opposite experience. With fewer emotional disturbances competing for attention, the mind begins noticing things it previously overlooked. Simple conversations become more meaningful because the mind is present instead of distracted. Moments of silence become peaceful instead of uncomfortable. Even ordinary experiences such as walking, breathing, or observing nature begin to feel richer because the mind is no longer crowded with unnecessary thoughts. Another powerful change appears in the way a person handles challenges. When the mind is constantly drained by negative energy, even small difficulties feel overwhelming. But when the mind is protected and balanced, challenges can be approached with patience and clarity. Instead of reacting impulsively, the person pauses and considers the situation carefully. Instead of feeling attacked by every criticism, they evaluate whether the feedback contains something useful. Instead of worrying endlessly about uncertain outcomes, they focus on the actions they can take in the present moment. This calm approach creates a sense of stability that many people spend years searching for. The most beautiful aspect of this transformation is that it does not depend on controlling the outside world. Life will always contain unpredictable moments. People will sometimes misunderstand you. Circumstances will change in ways you cannot control. But when you stop allowing draining energy to dominate your mind, these external events lose much of their power. They may still appear, but they no longer dictate your emotional state. This is the quiet strength that grows when you begin protecting your energy. The process also changes how you view relationships. Instead of constantly trying to maintain connections that feel heavy, you begin valuing relationships that support mutual respect and understanding. You become less interested in proving your worth to people who refuse to see it. Instead, you invest your energy in interactions that feel balanced and genuine. These healthier connections naturally strengthen your peace rather than weakening it. At the same time, you begin treating yourself with greater patience. Many people drain enormous energy through self-criticism. They replay past mistakes, compare themselves to others, and judge themselves harshly for imperfections. But when you start valuing your energy, you realize that this pattern also deserves to be released. Instead of repeating harsh thoughts about yourself, you practice understanding. You recognize that growth is a process that unfolds gradually through awareness and effort. This change in self-perception frees enormous mental energy. Energy that was once trapped in regret or insecurity becomes available for learning and creativity. Over time, all of these small shifts begin forming a new way of living. Your mind becomes more stable because it is no longer reacting to every disturbance. Your emotional state becomes lighter because unnecessary burdens have been released. Your attention becomes clearer because it is focused on what truly matters. And gradually you begin experiencing a form of peace that once seemed impossible. Not the temporary peace that appears only when everything goes perfectly, but a deeper peace that remains steady even when life becomes uncertain. This peace grows from the choices you make today. Every time you refuse to participate in unnecessary negativity, you protect your future calmness. Every time you step away from emotional conflict that serves no purpose, you create space for clarity. Every time you release thoughts that drain your spirit, you strengthen your inner balance. These choices may feel small in the moment, but their impact accumulates over time. Day after day, they shape the environment of your mind. And eventually you realize something important. Peace is not something you suddenly discover one day. It is something you build gradually by protecting your energy from the things that weaken it. The energy you refuse today becomes the calmness you experience tomorrow. The boundaries you create today become the stability you rely on in the future. And the awareness you practice today becomes the wisdom that guides your life. Because, in the end, the peace you are searching for is not hidden somewhere far away. It is quietly waiting for the moment you decide to stop accepting the energy that disturbs it. 15. When you finally respect your energy, your life begins to align. There is a quiet transformation that begins to happen in a person's life when they reach a certain level of awareness about themselves and the world around them. It is not something dramatic that happens overnight, and it is not something that other people immediately notice from the outside. Instead, it begins as a small shift inside the mind. A person slowly starts realizing that their time, attention, and emotional energy are far more valuable than they once believed. Once this realization begins to grow, the way they move through life starts to change. For many years, most people give away their energy without much awareness. They respond to every message immediately, even when the conversation drains their spirit. They engage in arguments that never lead to understanding. They worry endlessly about what others might think of them. They replay past situations in their mind again and again, trying to find answers to problems that can no longer be changed. At first, these habits may feel normal because they are so common in everyday life. But slowly, these patterns begin to exhaust the mind. A person may wake up already feeling tired before the day has even begun. Their thoughts move quickly from one worry to another. Even moments that should feel peaceful become filled with tension because the mind has become used to carrying too much emotional weight. Buddhist wisdom invites us to examine this pattern carefully. The teachings connected to the Gautama Buddha often remind us that suffering does not always come from dramatic tragedies. Many times it arises from the constant stream of small disturbances we allow into our mind without questioning them. Every complaint we listen to without awareness, every unnecessary conflict we engage in, and every negative thought we repeat becomes another small drain on our energy. One by one, these small drains accumulate until the mind begins to feel overwhelmed. But something powerful begins to change when a person finally starts respecting their energy. Respecting your energy means recognizing that your attention is not unlimited. Your mind has a certain capacity for focus, patience, and emotional balance. When that capacity is constantly consumed by distractions, worries, and conflicts, it becomes difficult to experience clarity. The moment a person begins respecting their energy, they start becoming more selective about where their attention goes. They begin noticing which conversations bring understanding and which conversations simply recycle negativity. They notice which activities leave them feeling calm and which ones leave them mentally exhausted. They begin recognizing which relationships support mutual growth and which ones repeatedly disturb their inner balance. This awareness creates the foundation for real change. Instead of automatically reacting to every situation, the person begins making conscious choices. Sometimes the choice is to remain silent instead of continuing a pointless argument. Sometimes the choice is to step away from an environment that constantly encourages stress. Sometimes the choice is simply to let go of thoughts that serve no useful purpose. Each of these decisions protects a small portion of the mind's energy. At first, these changes may feel unusual. Many people are used to responding instantly to every message, defending themselves in every disagreement, and analyzing every situation repeatedly in their thoughts. When they begin responding differently, others may notice the change. Some people may even interpret this new behavior as distance or indifference. But in reality, the person is not becoming cold or disconnected. They are simply learning to respect the limits of their own energy. This respect gradually creates a profound shift in the way life feels. When your energy is no longer scattered across endless distractions, your mind begins to experience something it may not have felt for a long time: clarity. Clarity allows you to see situations more accurately. Instead of reacting impulsively, you begin observing patterns. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by every challenge, you begin approaching problems with patience and thoughtfulness. This clarity also changes the way you interact with others. When you respect your energy, you no longer feel the need to prove yourself constantly. You speak honestly without trying to impress everyone. You listen more carefully because your mind is not crowded with internal noise. People often respond differently to this kind of presence. Calm awareness tends to create calm conversations. When someone interacts with a person who is emotionally balanced, the entire interaction often becomes more peaceful. Over time, relationships begin to align more naturally with this new energy. Connections built on constant drama or emotional dependence gradually lose their influence. These relationships often depended on the very patterns the person has begun releasing. At the same time, healthier connections become easier to recognize. Conversations with thoughtful and respectful people begin to feel more meaningful. Relationships that encourage growth and understanding begin to feel more valuable. This natural alignment happens not because the person forces change in the outside world, but because their inner priorities have shifted. Instead of chasing attention or approval, they are protecting their peace. Instead of reacting impulsively, they are responding with awareness. Another important transformation appears in how a person relates to uncertainty. Many people spend enormous amounts of energy worrying about events that have not yet happened. They imagine worst-case scenarios, analyze every possibility, and attempt to mentally control the future. But when someone begins respecting their energy, they realize that this kind of worry rarely improves the situation. Instead of filling their mind with endless predictions, they focus their attention on the actions they can take in the present moment. This shift reduces mental pressure significantly. The mind becomes calmer because it is no longer constantly fighting battles that exist only in imagination. Respecting your energy also changes the way you treat yourself internally. Many people unknowingly waste large amounts of energy through self-criticism. They replay mistakes repeatedly and judge themselves harshly for things they wish they had done differently. But when a person begins valuing their energy, they realize that constant self-judgment drains the mind without creating improvement. Instead, they begin practicing patience toward themselves. They recognize that growth happens through awareness and learning, not through endless punishment. This compassionate mindset creates emotional stability. Instead of feeling trapped by past mistakes, the person becomes focused on present understanding. As these changes continue, life begins to feel less chaotic. Decisions become clearer because they are guided by awareness rather than emotional pressure. Conversations become more meaningful because the mind is present instead of distracted. Challenges still appear, but they are approached with calmness rather than panic. Slowly, the entire rhythm of life begins to change. This transformation often surprises people because it does not require dramatic external change. The person may still live in the same place, work in the same environment, and interact with many of the same individuals. Yet everything feels different. The difference is not in the outside world. The difference is in how the person relates to their own energy. They are no longer giving it away carelessly. They are protecting it, guiding it, and investing it in what truly matters. Over time, this respect for energy creates a deep sense of alignment. Life begins to feel more balanced. The mind feels calmer. The heart feels lighter. And the person begins to realize something important. The peace they were searching for did not require controlling every situation or pleasing every person. It required learning how to respect the energy within themselves. Once that respect becomes part of daily life, everything begins to move in a new direction. A direction guided not by exhaustion and emotional chaos, but by awareness, clarity, and calm strength. And from that moment forward, life begins to align with the peace that was always waiting to grow inside them. 16. The peaceful life begins the day you stop arguing with reality. Many people spend a large part of their lives fighting battles that cannot be won. These battles are not always with other people. Often they happen quietly inside the mind. A person argues with things that have already happened, with circumstances that cannot be changed, and with realities that are simply part of the natural flow of life. This constant inner resistance slowly drains the mind of its strength. A person may not even realize they are doing it. They replay past events again and again, thinking about how things should have gone differently. They become frustrated with situations that are outside their control. They resist changes that life brings, hoping that by thinking hard enough, they can somehow reverse what has already happened. But this mental struggle rarely creates peace. Instead, it creates tension, frustration, and emotional exhaustion. Buddhist wisdom teaches that much of human suffering is created by this habit of resisting reality. The teachings connected to the Gautama Buddha explain that life is constantly changing. Situations arise, remain for a time, and eventually disappear. People enter our lives and later leave. Plans succeed sometimes and fail at other times. Change is not an accident in life. It is the nature of life itself. Yet the human mind often struggles to accept this truth. When something happens that we did not expect or do not like, the mind immediately begins resisting it. Instead of understanding the situation calmly, it begins asking endless questions. Why did this happen to me? Why did that person behave this way? Why didn't things turn out the way I hoped? These questions may feel natural, but they often trap the mind in a loop of frustration. The event has already happened, yet the mind continues arguing with it as if the past can be rewritten. Imagine trying to stop the flow of a river by pushing against the water with your hands. No matter how hard you push, the river continues moving. The more you resist, the more exhausted you become. Arguing with reality works in the same way. The situation has already occurred. The past has already formed. But the mind continues pushing against it, hoping that emotional resistance will somehow change the outcome. The moment a person understands this pattern, a powerful shift becomes possible. Instead of fighting reality, they begin learning how to accept it. Acceptance does not mean weakness, and it does not mean approving of everything that happens. It simply means recognizing that certain events are already part of life's unfolding story. When a person stops arguing with what has already happened, the mind experiences a surprising sense of relief. Energy that was previously trapped in frustration becomes available again. The mind becomes calmer because it is no longer fighting a battle that cannot be won. This change in perspective allows a person to approach life with greater clarity. Instead of wasting energy resisting reality, they begin focusing on what can actually be influenced, their response. Two people can experience the same difficult situation and respond in completely different ways. One person may remain trapped in resentment for years, replaying the event repeatedly in their mind. Their energy becomes tied to something that already belongs to the past. The other person may acknowledge the difficulty, learn what they can from the experience, and then move forward. Their attention returns to the present moment, where growth and change are possible. The difference between these two responses lies in acceptance. Acceptance allows the mind to release unnecessary conflict. Resistance keeps the mind trapped in endless emotional struggle. This lesson applies not only to past events, but also to the unpredictability of the future. Many people exhaust themselves trying to control every possible outcome. They imagine worst-case scenarios and attempt to prepare for every problem that might appear. While thoughtful planning can be helpful, constant worry about the future rarely creates real solutions. The future is naturally uncertain. Life unfolds through countless variables that no single person can fully control. When someone constantly tries to force certainty onto an uncertain world, the result is often anxiety. But when a person learns to accept uncertainty as part of life, their mind becomes more flexible. Instead of demanding that everything happen according to their expectations, they develop the ability to adapt. This adaptability creates resilience. When plans change, they adjust calmly instead of becoming overwhelmed. When challenges appear, they focus on solutions rather than dwelling on frustration. Acceptance does not remove difficulties from life, but it transforms how those difficulties are experienced. Another important area where acceptance brings peace is in relationships. Many conflicts between people arise because each person tries to change the other according to their own expectations. One person believes the other should behave differently. They try to correct them, convince them, or pressure them into becoming someone else. But every individual carries their own beliefs, experiences, and personal journey. Trying to control another person's growth often leads to tension and disappointment. Acceptance allows relationships to breathe. It allows you to appreciate someone's presence while understanding that they may not always behave the way you hope. This does not mean tolerating harmful behavior or abandoning healthy boundaries. It simply means recognizing that people change when they are ready, not when we demand it. When acceptance replaces control, relationships often become more peaceful. The constant struggle to shape another person's personality fades, leaving space for genuine understanding. Perhaps the most powerful form of acceptance, however, is acceptance of yourself. Many individuals spend years criticizing themselves for past mistakes, missed opportunities, or imperfections. They believe that harsh self-judgment will somehow force improvement, but constant self-criticism usually creates the opposite effect. It drains motivation and traps the mind in regret. Self-acceptance does not mean believing you are perfect. It means recognizing that growth happens through patience and awareness rather than endless punishment. When you accept your past actions as part of your learning process, the mind becomes lighter. Instead of carrying shame, you carry understanding. Instead of repeating the same regrets, you begin making wiser choices moving forward. This inner acceptance creates emotional stability. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth constantly because you understand that your value does not depend on perfection. Over time, all these forms of acceptance begin working together. You stop arguing with the past. You stop demanding certainty from the future. You stop trying to control every person and situation around you. And as this resistance fades, the mind becomes quieter. A peaceful life begins to emerge, not because the world suddenly becomes perfect, but because the inner conflict has ended. Challenges still appear, but they are no longer met with panic. Disagreements still occur, but they no longer dominate the mind. Unexpected changes still happen, but they are approached with calm adaptability. This is the quiet strength of acceptance. It allows you to move with life, rather than constantly pushing against it. And slowly you realize something profound. Peace was never hidden somewhere far away, waiting to be discovered. It was always available in the moment you stopped fighting what already exists. The peaceful life begins the day you stop arguing with reality. And from that moment forward, life becomes less of a battle and more of a journey guided by awareness, patience, and calm understanding. 17. The life that respects your energy begins when you respect yourself. Many people spend years trying to create a better life without realizing that the foundation of that life begins with something very simple but very powerful. Self-respect. They work hard, they try to improve their mindset, and they search for peace in many different places, yet something still feels out of alignment. The reason often lies in the quiet way they treat themselves internally. When a person does not truly respect themselves, They often allow situations into their life that slowly drain their energy. They tolerate conversations that leave them feeling small. They stay in environments where their voice is not valued. They keep trying to prove their worth to people who are not interested in understanding them. Each of these choices may seem small in the moment, but together they begin shaping a life that feels exhausting. Self-respect changes this pattern completely. It is not loud or aggressive. It is not about proving superiority over others. Instead, it is a quiet understanding that your energy, your attention, and your emotional well-being are valuable. Once a person begins to feel this truth deeply, the way they move through life begins to change. Buddhist teachings often emphasize awareness as the first step toward freedom. The teachings connected to the Gautama Buddha remind us that suffering frequently grows from ignorance about the patterns of our own mind. When we are not aware of how we treat ourselves internally, we may unknowingly allow situations that slowly weaken our peace. Many people grow up believing that being kind means always saying yes. They believe that protecting their own energy will make them appear selfish or uncaring. Because of this belief, they often ignore their own emotional limits. They listen to every complaint, accept every request, and remain present in conversations that repeatedly disturb their calmness. At first, this behavior may appear generous, but over time it begins to create resentment and exhaustion. The person may start feeling that others are constantly taking advantage of them, yet the deeper issue is often not what others are doing, but what the person has allowed for so long. Self-respect introduces a new kind of clarity. When a person begins respecting themselves, they start noticing how different situations affect their mind. They become aware of which environments support their growth and which ones constantly drain their energy. Instead of ignoring these signals, they begin honoring them. Sometimes this means stepping away from conversations that revolve around negativity. Sometimes it means declining requests that exceed their emotional capacity. Sometimes it simply means choosing silence instead of participating in unnecessary arguments. Each of these decisions protects a small portion of the mind's energy. Over time, these small decisions begin creating a very different emotional atmosphere. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by endless demands and conflicts, the person begins experiencing moments of calm clarity. They are no longer reacting automatically to every situation. They are choosing how to invest their energy. Self-respect also changes the way a person relates to criticism. When someone does not value themselves internally, criticism can feel deeply threatening. Even small negative comments may linger in the mind for days. The person may replay the situation repeatedly, wondering whether the criticism reflects something fundamentally wrong with them. But when self-respect grows, criticism is experienced differently. The person still listens carefully because feedback can sometimes contain useful insight, but they are no longer emotionally dependent on every opinion they hear. They understand that other people's judgments are shaped by their own perspectives, experiences, and emotional states. Because of this awareness, criticism loses much of its power to disturb the mind. The person can evaluate the comment calmly, learn from it if necessary, and then continue forward without carrying unnecessary emotional weight. Another important transformation occurs in relationships. When someone lacks self-respect, they often feel the need to earn love and acceptance. They try to please others constantly, hoping that their effort will secure approval. This dynamic can create relationships where one person gives endlessly while the other simply receives. But self-respect shifts the balance. Instead of chasing approval, the person begins valuing mutual respect and understanding. They recognize that healthy relationships are built on balance rather than emotional dependence. This awareness naturally changes the kinds of connections they maintain. Relationships based on manipulation or constant negativity begin to fade because they no longer match the person's internal values. At the same time, Relationships based on honesty and respect become stronger because they align with the new energy the person carries. Interestingly, this shift often happens without dramatic confrontation. When a person respects themselves, their behavior naturally communicates new boundaries. Their tone becomes calmer, their responses become clearer, and their presence reflects confidence rather than insecurity. Others begin sensing this change. Some people may initially resist it because they were comfortable with the old dynamic, but others will respond positively because the interaction now feels more balanced. Self-respect also transforms how a person experiences solitude. Many individuals fear being alone because they associate solitude with rejection or loneliness. They believe that constant company is necessary for happiness. As a result, they may stay in relationships or environments that do not truly support their peace simply to avoid feeling alone. But when self-respect develops, solitude begins to feel different. Instead of appearing as emptiness, it becomes a space for clarity. Moments spent alone allow the mind to settle. Thoughts become quieter because there are fewer external distractions competing for attention. The person begins understanding their own emotions more clearly because they are not constantly reacting to other people's expectations. This quiet awareness often leads to deeper insight. The person begins recognizing patterns in their behavior and relationships that were previously invisible. They see how certain habits drained their energy and how certain choices strengthened their peace. With this understanding, future decisions become wiser. Self-respect also encourages patience with personal growth. Many people become frustrated with themselves when progress happens slowly. They expect instant transformation and judge themselves harshly when old habits reappear. But respecting yourself means recognizing that growth is a gradual process. Just as a tree does not grow to full height in a single day, emotional maturity develops through consistent awareness over time. Each moment of mindfulness strengthens this process. Each time you choose calmness instead of reaction, you reinforce your inner stability. Each time you protect your energy from unnecessary disturbance, you strengthen your peace. Over months and years, these small choices accumulate. They gradually reshape the direction of your life. Your mind becomes calmer because it is no longer constantly defending itself against negativity. Your relationships become healthier because they are built on mutual respect rather than emotional dependence. Your decisions become clearer because your attention is no longer scattered across endless worries. And eventually you realize something profound. The life that respects your energy did not appear by accident. It began the moment you started respecting yourself. When you treat your time, attention, and emotional well-being as valuable, the entire structure of your life begins to shift. You become less interested in proving yourself to people who do not appreciate you. You become more interested in living in a way that feels honest and balanced. And through this quiet transformation, your life gradually aligns with the peace you have been seeking. Because, in the end, the world often reflects the way we treat ourselves. When you respect your energy, life begins respecting it too. And from that moment forward, your path becomes guided not by exhaustion and constant reaction, but by calm awareness and genuine self-respect. 18. The mind becomes free. The day you stop carrying what was never yours. There is a quiet burden that many people carry throughout their lives without even realizing it. It is not something visible, and it does not always appear as a clear problem. Yet it slowly drains the mind and the heart. This burden is the emotional weight of things that were never truly ours to carry. People absorb other people's anger, other people's expectations, other people's judgments, and even other people's pain. Over time, this constant absorption begins to exhaust the spirit. Many individuals grow up believing that caring for others means carrying everything that happens around them. If someone they love is upset, they feel responsible for fixing the situation. If someone criticizes them, they feel compelled to explain themselves repeatedly. If someone behaves unfairly, they replay the situation in their mind, trying to understand what they did wrong. At first, this may feel like kindness or responsibility, but gradually it becomes a heavy emotional load. The mind begins to feel crowded because it is holding too many things at once. Buddhist wisdom invites us to look carefully at this pattern. The teachings connected to the Gautama Buddha remind us that suffering often arises when we become attached to experiences and emotions that do not belong to us. Compassion does not mean carrying every burden placed in front of us. Compassion means understanding suffering without allowing it to consume our inner peace. Many people unknowingly carry emotional weight that originated in other people's minds. Someone else's anger becomes something they analyze for hours. Someone else's disappointment becomes something they feel responsible for repairing. Someone else's misunderstanding becomes something they try endlessly to correct. In reality, each person experiences life through their own thoughts, expectations, and perceptions. When someone reacts with anger or frustration, that reaction often reflects their own internal state rather than something we caused directly. But when we do not recognize this distinction, we begin carrying their emotions as if they were our own. Imagine walking through a crowded marketplace where everyone is carrying heavy bags. If each person you pass hands you one of their bags, and you accept every single one, your arms will soon become overwhelmed with weight. The exhaustion you feel will not come from your own belongings, but from the bags you agreed to carry for everyone else. The mind works in a similar way. Every criticism you take personally becomes another bag. Every expectation you try to fulfill becomes another bag. Every emotional reaction you absorb becomes another bag. Eventually, the mind becomes so full that even small situations feel overwhelming. Freedom begins the moment you realize that many of these burdens were never yours to hold. This realization does not mean becoming indifferent to others. It simply means understanding the difference between empathy and emotional absorption. Empathy allows you to understand someone's feelings and offer support. Emotional absorption causes you to carry their feelings as if they were your responsibility. When a person begins practicing this awareness, their inner experience changes dramatically. For example, imagine someone expressing frustration toward you. In the past, you might have replayed the conversation repeatedly, wondering whether you caused the problem or how you could repair the situation. Your mind would remain occupied long after the interaction ended. But with awareness, you begin noticing something different. You listen carefully to what the person says. If their words contain useful insight, you consider it calmly. But if their reaction comes from their own stress or misunderstanding, you recognize that it belongs to their internal world. Instead of carrying that emotional reaction inside your mind for hours, you allow it to pass. This simple shift releases enormous mental energy. The same principle applies to expectations. Many people feel enormous pressure because they try to meet every expectation placed on them by family, friends, colleagues, and society. They believe that disappointing someone means they have failed as a person. But the truth is that every individual carries their own expectations, shaped by their experiences and beliefs. It is impossible to fulfill all of them simultaneously. When you attempt to meet every expectation placed upon you, the result is constant exhaustion. Freedom begins when you recognize that your responsibility is not to satisfy every expectation, but to act with honesty and awareness. You listen respectfully to others, but you no longer feel obligated to shape your entire life around their opinions. Another common burden people carry is the need to fix everyone else's problems. Many kind-hearted individuals feel responsible for solving the difficulties of those around them. They listen to every complaint, offer endless advice, and invest emotional energy trying to repair situations they cannot control. While support and compassion are valuable, constantly trying to solve other people's lives can quickly drain your own energy. Each person must ultimately walk their own path. You can offer guidance and encouragement, but you cannot live another person's life for them. When someone begins understanding this truth, their relationships become healthier. Instead of feeling responsible for controlling outcomes, they simply offer presence and understanding. If someone chooses to grow, they celebrate that growth. If someone continues repeating the same patterns, they allow that person to learn their own lessons. This approach creates balance. You remain compassionate without becoming emotionally overwhelmed. Another powerful transformation occurs when you stop carrying other people's judgments. Human beings naturally form opinions about each other. Some of these opinions are thoughtful and constructive, while others are influenced by misunderstanding, insecurity, or personal bias. When someone lacks awareness, they often absorb every judgment they hear. A negative comment can linger in their mind for days. They may question their worth or replay the situation repeatedly. But when the mind becomes clearer, it begins recognizing that judgments reflect the perspective of the person expressing them. Someone may misunderstand your intentions because they see the world through a different lens. Someone may criticize your choices because they follow a different path. These judgments do not define your value. When you stop carrying every opinion as if it were a personal truth, the mind becomes lighter. You can listen to feedback calmly without allowing it to control your self-perception. Over time, this awareness creates a powerful sense of emotional independence. You are no longer constantly reacting to other people's moods or expectations. You remain attentive and compassionate, but your peace does not depend on everyone else's approval. The mind gradually becomes quieter because it is no longer carrying unnecessary burdens. Thoughts slow down. Emotional reactions become less intense. Situations that once felt overwhelming begin to feel manageable. And eventually you realize something important. Much of the weight you once carried was never truly yours. You were simply accepting responsibilities that belonged to other people's minds. The moment you stop carrying what was never yours, your energy begins returning. Your attention becomes clearer. Your emotional stability grows stronger. And life begins to feel lighter in a way that once seemed impossible. Because freedom does not always come from changing the outside world. Sometimes it comes from gently setting down the burdens you were never meant to carry. And the mind becomes truly free the day you understand that difference. 19. The quiet mind is the most powerful form of strength. In a world that constantly encourages noise, speed, and endless reaction, the idea of a quiet mind often feels unfamiliar. Many people believe that strength comes from always speaking, always responding, and always proving themselves in every situation. They think that if they stop reacting, others will see them as weak or passive. Because of this belief, the mind becomes trapped in a constant cycle of activity. Every message demands an answer, every criticism demands a defense, and every conflict demands participation. But over time, this endless reaction begins to exhaust the mind. The person may appear active and engaged, yet inside they feel overwhelmed. Their thoughts race from one situation to another without rest. Even when they try to relax, their mind continues replaying conversations, imagining future problems, or analyzing things that happened earlier in the day. This constant mental noise creates a feeling of pressure that many people struggle to escape. Buddhist wisdom offers a completely different understanding of strength. The teachings connected to the Gautama Buddha explain that the most powerful mind is not the one that reacts to everything, but the one that remains calm and aware in the middle of disturbance. A quiet mind does not mean a mind without thoughts. It means a mind that is no longer controlled by every thought that appears. Most people experience thoughts like waves in a storm. One thought leads to another, and each thought pulls attention in a new direction. A criticism leads to anger, a worry leads to fear, a memory leads to regret. Without awareness, these thoughts create a chain reaction that fills the entire mental space. But when someone begins practicing mindfulness, something important changes. They begin observing their thoughts instead of automatically believing them. A thought appears, but instead of immediately reacting, they notice it. A worry arises, but instead of following it into endless predictions, they observe it calmly. An emotional reaction begins, but instead of letting it explode outward, they pause. This pause is where the quiet mind begins. At first, this may feel difficult because the mind has spent years reacting automatically. It is used to jumping from one emotional response to another. But with practice, awareness becomes stronger. The person begins recognizing that not every thought deserves attention. Some thoughts are useful because they help solve problems or encourage growth. But many thoughts are simply echoes of fear, habit, or past experiences. When the mind stops chasing every thought, space begins to appear. In that space, calmness grows. This calmness changes the way a person experiences the world. Imagine two people facing the same stressful situation. One person reacts immediately. Their voice rises, their thoughts race, and their emotions become intense. The situation quickly escalates because their reaction adds more tension. The second person experiences the same situation but responds differently. Instead of reacting instantly, they remain quiet for a moment. They observe what is happening. They allow their emotions to settle before speaking. This quiet response often changes the entire direction of the situation. Conflicts lose intensity when they are not fed with emotional reactions. Misunderstandings become easier to resolve when the mind remains calm. Decisions become clearer because they are not clouded by impulsive emotions. This is the hidden power of a quiet mind. It does not create peace by forcing the world to change. It creates peace by refusing to add unnecessary disturbance. Another important aspect of the quiet mind is its ability to see reality more clearly. When the mind is filled with constant noise, it becomes difficult to understand situations accurately. Emotions distort perception. Fear exaggerates problems. Anger narrows understanding. But when the mind becomes quiet, perception becomes sharper. You begin noticing details you previously overlooked. You begin understanding other people's perspectives more easily. You begin recognizing patterns in your own reactions that were previously invisible. This clarity makes life easier to navigate. Instead of reacting blindly, you begin responding thoughtfully. Another benefit of the quiet mind is emotional resilience. Life will always contain moments of uncertainty, disappointment, and unexpected change. No one can completely avoid these experiences, but a quiet mind responds differently to them. Instead of becoming overwhelmed, it observes the situation calmly. Instead of imagining the worst possible outcome, it focuses on the present moment. Instead of reacting with panic, it searches for understanding. This resilience creates stability. Even when challenges appear, the person remains balanced. Their emotions move through awareness without controlling their actions. Over time, this stability becomes a powerful source of confidence. The person no longer feels the need to prove their strength through loud reactions or constant activity. They understand that true strength comes from maintaining calm awareness. Interestingly, this quiet strength often influences others as well. When someone remains calm in the middle of chaos, their presence changes the emotional atmosphere of the environment. Conversations become less aggressive. People begin speaking more thoughtfully. The situation gradually settles because one person refused to contribute additional noise. This is why many great teachers and leaders throughout history emphasize the value of inner stillness. They understood that clarity grows in silence, while confusion grows in constant reaction. A quiet mind also improves the quality of relationships. When your mind is calm, you listen more carefully to others. You are not constantly preparing your next response while the other person is speaking. Instead, you are fully present in the conversation. This presence creates deeper understanding. People feel heard rather than judged. Disagreements become opportunities for learning rather than battles to win. Over time, relationships become more meaningful because they are built on awareness rather than impulsive reactions. The quiet mind also transforms how a person experiences solitude. Many people feel uncomfortable when they are alone because their mind becomes filled with restless thoughts. Without distractions, they are forced to face the noise inside their own head. But when the mind becomes quieter, solitude begins to feel peaceful instead of uncomfortable. Moments alone become opportunities for reflection and creativity. Ideas appear more easily because the mind is not crowded with constant distraction. Simple experiences like walking, breathing, or observing nature become deeply satisfying. The person begins appreciating life in ways they never noticed before. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of the quiet mind is the freedom it creates. Freedom from the need to respond to every criticism. Freedom from the endless cycle of worry about the future. Freedom from replaying past mistakes again and again. This freedom allows the person to live more fully in the present moment. They become less controlled by external circumstances and more guided by inner awareness. And gradually they begin to understand something profound. Strength is not always loud. Strength does not always appear in arguments won or battles fought. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one whose mind remains quiet, the one who listens carefully instead of reacting instantly, the one who observes before speaking, the one who chooses calm awareness instead of emotional chaos. Because, in a noisy world, the quiet mind becomes one of the most powerful forms of strength a human being can develop. And once this strength is cultivated, life begins to feel clearer, calmer, and deeply balanced. 20. The moment you choose peace over reaction, your life begins to change. There is a subtle moment that appears many times during an ordinary day, yet most people do not notice it. It is the small gap between what happens and how we respond to it. Someone says something unexpected. A situation unfolds differently than planned. A mistake occurs. In that instant, the mind prepares to react. For many people, this reaction happens so quickly that it feels automatic. Words are spoken, emotions rise, and actions follow before awareness has time to intervene. But hidden within that small moment lies one of the most powerful choices a person can make. It is the choice between reaction and peace. Most people are taught, consciously or unconsciously, to react immediately to everything around them. When someone criticizes them, they defend themselves. When someone disagrees, they argue. When circumstances become difficult, they complain or worry. Because these reactions are common, they begin to feel natural and unavoidable. Yet over time, this constant reaction creates a life filled with tension. Every disagreement becomes a battle. Every misunderstanding becomes a source of frustration. The mind becomes tired because it is constantly responding to every disturbance that appears. Buddhist wisdom reveals that the true source of peace does not come from controlling what happens around us, but from understanding how we respond to it. The teachings connected to the Gautama Buddha often describe the importance of awareness in that small space between event and reaction. When awareness is present, that space becomes larger. Instead of reacting instantly, the mind pauses. In that pause, something extraordinary becomes possible. You can choose peace. At first, this may seem like a very small decision. Remaining calm for a moment instead of reacting immediately does not appear dramatic, but when practiced consistently, This simple choice transforms the entire experience of life. Imagine a conversation where someone suddenly criticizes you. Without awareness, the mind instantly prepares a defense. Words come quickly, emotions intensify, and the conversation becomes heated. Both people leave the interaction feeling misunderstood and frustrated. But if you pause before reacting, the situation unfolds differently. You hear the words, but instead of immediately responding with emotion, you observe them. You notice how the criticism affects your thoughts. You allow your breathing to slow. Only then do you respond. Often the response becomes calmer and more thoughtful. Instead of escalating the conflict, you may ask a question. Instead of defending yourself aggressively, you may clarify your perspective calmly. Sometimes you may even choose not to respond at all. This does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending that nothing happened. It means allowing awareness to guide your response instead of allowing emotions to control it. When a person begins practicing this approach, the emotional atmosphere of their life changes dramatically. Arguments become less frequent because they are not fueled by impulsive reactions. Misunderstandings are resolved more easily because calm communication replaces emotional intensity. The mind begins to feel lighter because it is no longer constantly engaged in conflict. Choosing peace over reaction also transforms how a person experiences stressful situations. Life inevitably brings moments of difficulty. Plans fail, people disappoint us, and unexpected problems appear. When the mind reacts impulsively to these events, stress quickly multiplies. One negative situation leads to another because emotional reactions influence decisions and behavior. But when a person pauses and chooses peace, the experience becomes different. Instead of reacting with panic, they observe the situation carefully. Instead of imagining the worst possible outcome, they focus on what can be done in the present moment. This calm awareness allows solutions to appear more clearly. A quiet mind sees possibilities that a reactive mind often misses. Over time, this habit of choosing peace strengthens emotional resilience. The person becomes less disturbed by external events because they no longer allow every situation to control their internal state. Criticism may still occur, but it does not dominate their thoughts. Unexpected challenges may still arise, but they are approached with patience rather than panic. This stability creates a deep sense of confidence, not the loud confidence that comes from proving superiority over others, but the quiet confidence that grows from understanding your own mind. Another powerful change occurs in relationships. Many conflicts between people arise not because the original problem was severe, but because emotional reactions intensified it. A small misunderstanding can quickly turn into a large argument when both individuals react impulsively. But when one person chooses peace, the dynamic often shifts. Calm responses reduce tension. Thoughtful listening encourages understanding. The conversation becomes an opportunity for clarity instead of a battle for dominance. This does not mean that disagreements disappear completely. People will always have different perspectives. But when peace guides the interaction, those differences can be explored without hostility. Choosing peace also changes how a person relates to their own thoughts. Many individuals react to their thoughts in the same way they react to external situations. A negative thought appears, and they immediately believe it. A worry arises, and they follow it into endless speculation about the future. A regret appears, and they replay the past repeatedly. But awareness allows a different approach. When a thought appears, the person observes it instead of reacting instantly. They ask themselves whether the thought is useful or simply a habit of the mind. If it is useful, they consider it calmly. If it is not useful, they allow it to pass without feeding it with attention. This practice gradually reduces the constant noise inside the mind. Thoughts still appear, but they no longer control emotional reactions. The mind becomes calmer and more balanced. One of the most beautiful effects of choosing peace is the way it influences daily life. Simple experiences become more enjoyable because the mind is not constantly distracted by emotional turmoil. Conversations become more meaningful because attention is fully present. Even moments of silence become comforting instead of uncomfortable. Life begins to feel slower in the best possible way, not because time has changed, but because the mind is no longer racing from one reaction to another. Over time, this calm awareness becomes a natural part of the person's character. They no longer need to remind themselves constantly to remain peaceful. The habit of pausing before reacting becomes automatic. Others may notice this change. They may describe the person as calm, patient, or wise, but the truth is simpler. The person has simply learned to respect the power of that small moment between event and reaction. In that moment, they choose awareness. In that moment, they choose peace. And each time they make that choice, their life moves a little further away from chaos and a little closer to balance. Because peace is not something that suddenly appears in the future. It is something created through the decisions we make in the present. Every time you pause, instead of reacting, you strengthen your peace. Every time you observe instead of escalating, you protect your energy. Every time you respond with awareness instead of emotion, you transform the atmosphere of your life. And slowly, almost without noticing, your entire life begins to change. Not because the world became perfect, but because you learned to choose peace within it. 21. The day you stop chasing approval is the day you become truly free. Many people spend most of their lives quietly chasing something they rarely question. They chase approval. Sometimes it appears in the form of praise from others. Sometimes it appears as the desire to be accepted, respected, or admired. From childhood onward, people are often taught to seek validation from the world around them. They learn that good behavior brings praise, achievements bring recognition, and agreement from others creates a feeling of belonging. At first, this search for approval may seem harmless. After all, human beings naturally value connection and appreciation, but over time, the desire for approval can quietly begin to control a person's decisions. They may choose certain paths not because those paths align with their inner truth, but because they believe those choices will make others happy. They may silence their own voice in conversations to avoid disagreement. They may tolerate situations that drain their energy simply because they fear being rejected. Gradually, life becomes shaped by the opinions of others rather than by personal awareness. This pattern often leads to deep exhaustion. A person who constantly tries to satisfy everyone eventually discovers that it is impossible. Different people hold different expectations, different beliefs, and different ideas about what someone should be. Trying to meet all of these expectations at once becomes an endless and exhausting task. Buddhist wisdom offers a powerful insight into this struggle. The teachings connected to the Gautama Buddha remind us that attachment to praise and fear of blame are two sides of the same trap. When a person becomes attached to being liked or admired, they also become vulnerable to criticism. Their emotional state begins rising and falling depending on how others respond to them. If someone praises them, they feel uplifted. If someone criticizes them, they feel discouraged. If someone approves of their choices, they feel confident. If someone disapproves, they begin doubting themselves. In this way, their inner stability becomes dependent on external opinions. But something extraordinary begins to happen when a person slowly releases the need for constant approval. At first, this shift may feel uncomfortable. Many people have spent years building their identity around how others perceive them. Letting go of that habit can create uncertainty. However, with awareness, a new form of freedom begins to emerge. The person starts realizing that approval from others is unpredictable. Even the most respected individuals in history have faced criticism. Even the kindest actions can be misunderstood. Expecting universal approval is like expecting the weather to remain the same every day. Once this truth becomes clear, the mind begins relaxing its grip on external validation. Instead of asking, "Will people approve of this decision?" the person begins asking a different question. Does this decision align with my values and understanding? This question shifts attention inward. Decisions are no longer guided by the changing opinions of others, but by inner clarity. This shift also changes how the person experiences disagreement. Previously, disagreement may have felt threatening. It might have triggered the need to defend every opinion or prove every point. But when approval is no longer the primary goal, disagreement becomes less personal. Different perspectives are recognized as part of the natural diversity of human thought. The person becomes more comfortable expressing their views calmly without needing to convince everyone else to agree. This calm confidence often surprises others. Someone who is not chasing approval carries a different kind of presence. Their words are measured rather than reactive. Their actions come from clarity rather than pressure. People may sense this stability even if they cannot fully explain it. Interestingly, releasing the need for approval often improves relationships rather than damaging them. When a person constantly tries to please others, their behavior can feel forced or inauthentic. They may agree with things they do not truly believe or say what they think others want to hear. But when approval is no longer the central motivation, communication becomes more honest. The person listens more carefully because they are not focused on defending themselves. They speak more openly because they are not afraid of disagreement. This honesty often creates deeper and more meaningful connections. Another important benefit of releasing approval seeking is the recovery of energy. Seeking approval requires enormous mental effort. The mind constantly analyzes how it is being perceived. Did I say the right thing? Did they misunderstand me? Do they think well of me? These thoughts can quietly occupy the mind for hours or even days. But when a person stops chasing approval, these mental loops begin to fade. The mind becomes quieter. Energy that was previously spent on endless self-evaluation becomes available for creativity, learning, and presence. Daily experiences begin to feel richer because attention is no longer scattered across worries about perception. Instead of performing for the world, the person simply participates in life. They speak when they have something meaningful to say. They listen when understanding is needed. They remain silent when silence serves peace better than argument. This natural way of being creates a profound sense of freedom. Freedom from the pressure to impress. Freedom from the fear of being misunderstood. Freedom from the endless need to explain or justify every choice. This freedom also changes the way a person views success. When approval drives behavior, success often becomes defined by recognition from others. Achievements are valued mainly for the praise they bring, but when inner clarity replaces approval seeking, success begins to look different. Success becomes living according to your values. Success becomes acting with honesty and awareness. Success becomes maintaining peace of mind, even when external recognition is absent. This shift removes enormous pressure from life. The person no longer feels the need to constantly prove their worth. They understand that their value does not depend on the changing opinions of others. Over time, this understanding grows into quiet self-respect. The person trusts their own judgment more deeply. They accept that mistakes will happen and that growth is part of the journey. They no longer feel devastated by criticism because their identity is not built entirely on external praise. And interestingly, when someone stops chasing approval, they often receive more respect from others. People tend to admire calm authenticity. Someone who lives according to their principles without constant need for validation often appears grounded and trustworthy. But by the time this respect arrives, the person no longer depends on it. Their peace already comes from within. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this transformation is the sense of lightness it creates. Life becomes simpler, decisions become clearer, relationships become more genuine, the mind becomes quieter because it is no longer constantly measuring itself against others' expectations, and slowly a deep realization begins to form. The freedom you were searching for was never hidden in someone else's approval. It was waiting in the moment you stopped chasing it. The day you stop chasing approval is the day you begin living according to your own awareness. It is the day your energy returns to you. It is the day your mind becomes lighter. And it is the day you finally begin experiencing the quiet freedom that comes from being fully yourself. 22. The mind that lets go becomes unstoppable. There is a quiet power that begins to grow inside a person when they finally understand the art of letting go. At first, this idea may sound simple, almost too simple to change a life. Many people hear the phrase "let go" and imagine it means giving up or becoming indifferent. But in reality, letting go is one of the most powerful forms of inner mastery a person can develop. Most of the exhaustion people feel in life does not come from the challenges themselves. It comes from the way the mind holds on to those challenges long after the moment has passed. A conversation ends, yet the mind continues replaying it. A mistake happens, yet the memory repeats itself again and again. Someone says something hurtful, yet the emotional reaction remains alive for days, weeks, or even years. This habit of holding on to everything slowly fills the mind with unnecessary weight. Imagine trying to walk forward while carrying a heavy backpack filled with objects you no longer need. At first you may not notice the burden, but over time each step becomes more difficult. The weight begins to slow you down, drain your strength, and make even simple movements feel exhausting. The mind works in a similar way. Every regret we refuse to release becomes another stone in that backpack. Every resentment we continue feeding becomes another layer of weight. Every worry about things beyond our control becomes another burden. Eventually, the mind becomes so crowded with these emotional weights that peace begins to feel impossible. Buddhist wisdom offers a profound understanding of this pattern. The teachings connected to the Gautama Buddha explain that attachment is one of the main causes of human suffering. When we cling tightly to experiences, expectations, and emotions, we create resistance against the natural flow of life. Life is constantly moving. Situations change. People evolve. Moments appear and disappear. But when the mind insists on holding on to things exactly as they were, conflict arises between reality and expectation. Letting go dissolves this conflict. Letting go does not mean ignoring experiences or pretending they never happened. It simply means allowing them to complete their natural course instead of trapping them in endless repetition inside the mind. When a person begins practicing this skill, the first noticeable change is relief. Thoughts that once felt heavy begin losing their intensity. Memories that once caused emotional pain begin fading into simple understanding. The mind slowly regains the energy that was previously consumed by constant mental replay. This transformation happens step by step. At first, letting go may require conscious effort. A difficult thought appears, and the person notices the mind beginning to replay it. Instead of following that thought deeper into frustration or regret, they pause. They acknowledge the thought. They recognize the emotion connected to it. Then they gently return their attention to the present moment. Each time they do this, the mind learns something new. It learns that thoughts do not need to control awareness. It learns that emotions can pass without being fed by endless attention. Over time, this practice becomes easier. Thoughts still appear, but they no longer dominate the mind. They move through awareness like clouds passing across the sky. This shift creates a surprising kind of strength. Many people believe strength comes from holding on to things tightly. They believe that remembering every insult, every disappointment, and every mistake somehow protects them. But in reality, this habit only traps the mind in cycles of suffering. True strength comes from the ability to release what no longer serves your peace. When you let go of resentment, you free yourself from carrying someone else's actions inside your mind. When you let go of regret, you allow the past to remain where it belongs instead of recreating it in the present. When you let go of constant worry, you give your attention back to the moment where life is actually happening. This freedom makes the mind incredibly resilient. Challenges still appear, but they no longer linger endlessly. Conflicts still occur, but they do not become permanent emotional wounds. Unexpected situations still arise, but the mind adapts rather than resisting. This adaptability is what makes the mind unstoppable. An unstoppable mind is not one that never experiences difficulty. It is a mind that does not become trapped by difficulty. It responds, learns, and moves forward. Another beautiful result of letting go is the clarity it brings to relationships. Many conflicts between people continue far longer than necessary because both sides keep holding on to past grievances. Each conversation becomes influenced by memories of previous disagreements. When someone practices letting go, they stop carrying yesterday's conflict into today's interaction. They approach each moment fresh rather than through the lens of old emotions. This does not mean ignoring patterns of harmful behavior. Healthy boundaries remain important, but the emotional burden of past resentment no longer controls the present. As a result, relationships often become calmer and more authentic. Communication improves because the mind is not clouded by old anger. Understanding grows because attention is focused on the present rather than the past. Letting go also transforms the way a person experiences uncertainty. Many people try to control every detail of the future. They plan endlessly, imagine possible problems, and attempt to prepare for every outcome. While thoughtful planning can be useful, excessive control creates anxiety. Life contains countless variables beyond anyone's control. Letting go of the need to control everything creates a different relationship with uncertainty. Instead of fearing the unknown, the person begins trusting their ability to respond when situations arise. They focus on what they can do in the present rather than worrying endlessly about what might happen tomorrow. This trust builds quiet confidence. The person no longer feels the need to predict every outcome. They know that whatever happens, awareness and patience will guide their response. Perhaps the most powerful transformation occurs within the mind itself. When someone practices letting go consistently, the internal atmosphere begins to change. Thoughts become less chaotic. Emotions become more balanced. Silence becomes comfortable rather than uncomfortable. Moments of stillness appear more frequently. In these moments, the mind begins experiencing something many people search for without realizing it: peace. Not the temporary peace that appears only when circumstances are perfect, but a deeper peace that remains present even when life becomes uncertain. This peace grows because the mind is no longer fighting endless battles with the past, the future, or other people's opinions. Instead, it rests in awareness. And from that awareness comes a quiet but powerful strength, a strength that allows the person to move through life without being trapped by every disturbance, a strength that allows them to release what no longer serves them, a strength that grows each time they choose peace instead of attachment. Eventually, a simple but profound realization emerges. The things that once felt impossible to release were never truly holding you. You were holding them. The moment you open your hands and let them fall away, your mind becomes lighter. Your energy returns. Your path becomes clearer. and you begin walking through life with a freedom that once seemed out of reach. Because the mind that learns to let go is not weak, it is unstoppable. 23. The life you want begins when you stop feeding what drains you. Many people search for peace, clarity, and happiness, as if these things exist somewhere outside their current life. They believe that one day, when circumstances improve, when people change, or when they finally achieve certain goals, life will suddenly become calm and fulfilling. But often the deeper truth is much simpler. The life a person desires is not blocked by lack of opportunity or luck. It is often blocked by the energy they continue feeding every day without realizing it. Every thought we repeat, every conversation we engage in, and every emotional reaction we encourage becomes a kind of fuel. That fuel strengthens certain patterns in the mind. When a person constantly feeds worry, their mind becomes skilled at worrying. When they constantly feed resentment, their mind becomes skilled at holding on to anger. When they repeatedly participate in negativity, their mind becomes comfortable living in that atmosphere. Over time, these patterns begin shaping the entire experience of life. A person may genuinely want peace, yet their daily habits may be feeding the opposite. They may spend hours thinking about past arguments, listening to complaints, or replaying painful memories. Each of these actions quietly nourishes the very state of mind they wish to escape. Buddhist wisdom explains this process clearly. The teachings connected to the Gautama Buddha remind us that the mind grows in the direction of what it repeatedly experiences. Just as a garden grows the plants it is constantly watered with, the mind grows the emotions and thoughts it continually feeds. If negativity receives constant attention, it grows stronger. If awareness and calmness receive attention, they begin to grow instead. Many people never pause long enough to observe this pattern. Their attention moves automatically from one stimulation to another. News headlines create worry. Social conversations encourage comparison. Online discussions trigger arguments. Without noticing it, the mind becomes surrounded by constant noise. The result is emotional exhaustion. Even when nothing dramatic has happened, the person feels mentally tired. Their thoughts feel heavy because the mind has been continuously feeding on stress and distraction. But something powerful begins to change the moment a person becomes aware of what they are feeding. Awareness creates choice. Instead of automatically reacting to every situation, the person begins asking a simple but transformative question. Is this worth my energy? This question may appear small, but it gradually changes everything. When someone complains constantly, the person may listen with compassion, but they no longer feed the conversation by repeating the same negativity for hours. When a memory from the past appears, they acknowledge it, but they do not continue replaying it endlessly. When a stressful thought arises, they notice it and return their attention to the present moment instead of allowing it to multiply. Each of these small decisions reduces the energy being given to what drains the mind. Over time, this shift becomes noticeable. The mind begins feeling quieter. The emotional pressure that once filled every moment begins to ease. Clarity returns because the mental space is no longer crowded with endless repetition of draining thoughts. This change also influences how a person experiences the world around them. Previously, they may have felt surrounded by negativity. Everywhere they looked, they noticed problems, criticism, and conflict. But when they stop feeding those patterns internally, their perception begins to change. They notice moments of kindness that previously went unnoticed. They notice conversations that inspire growth rather than conflict. They notice simple experiences such as walking outside, breathing deeply, or listening carefully to someone that feels surprisingly peaceful. This does not mean the world itself has suddenly transformed. It means the mind has stopped feeding only the things that disturb it. Another important area where this principle appears is in relationships. Many people unknowingly feed dynamics that drain them. For example, when someone constantly criticizes them, they may react by defending themselves again and again. Each reaction feeds the cycle of criticism and defense. But when they stop feeding the pattern, the dynamic begins to shift. Instead of responding with emotional intensity, they respond calmly, or sometimes not at all. Without the fuel of reaction, the cycle often weakens. The same principle applies to arguments. Arguments grow when both sides continue feeding emotional responses. When one person chooses calmness instead of escalation, the argument loses much of its momentum. This does not mean avoiding every difficult conversation. Honest communication is still important. But the emotional intensity that once drained the mind no longer receives constant fuel. Over time, this practice creates a different kind of presence. The person becomes known as calm rather than reactive. Others may notice that conflicts rarely disturb them deeply. Their responses feel thoughtful rather than impulsive. This calm presence often influences the atmosphere around them. Just as negativity spreads through constant reaction, calmness spreads through awareness. People begin feeling more comfortable speaking openly around someone who does not escalate tension. Conversations become more meaningful because they are not dominated by emotional turbulence. The person who once felt drained by interactions now finds them less exhausting. Another powerful result of this awareness is the ability to release unhealthy mental habits. Many individuals feed self-criticism constantly. They repeat thoughts like, "I should have done better," or "Why did I make that mistake?" long after the moment has passed. These thoughts feel productive because they appear to analyze the past, but in reality they often create unnecessary suffering. When someone stops feeding these patterns, something important happens. The mind begins learning from mistakes instead of punishing itself endlessly. A mistake becomes information rather than a source of shame. Growth becomes possible because energy is directed toward understanding rather than self-judgment. Over time, this shift builds quiet confidence. The person trusts that they can learn and adapt without needing to attack themselves mentally. The mind becomes more supportive rather than critical. This supportive inner environment strengthens emotional resilience. Life inevitably brings challenges, but the mind is no longer weakened by constant negativity. Instead, it remains steady. Problems are addressed calmly. Solutions appear more easily because the mind is not overwhelmed by emotional noise. Perhaps the most profound realization that arises from this practice is how much influence attention truly has. Attention is like sunlight in a garden. Wherever it shines consistently, growth appears. When attention constantly shines on fear, fear grows. When attention shines on resentment, resentment grows. But when attention shines on awareness, patience, and understanding, these qualities begin to grow instead. This realization gives a person tremendous power over their experience of life. They may not control every event that occurs around them, but they can influence what they continue feeding within their own mind. Each day becomes an opportunity to nourish peace instead of tension. Each conversation becomes an opportunity to choose understanding instead of reaction. Each thought becomes an opportunity to strengthen awareness instead of worry. Gradually, the emotional atmosphere of life begins changing. The mind feels lighter because it is no longer constantly feeding what drains it. Energy returns because it is no longer consumed by endless cycles of negativity. The life the person once searched for begins appearing naturally, not because the world suddenly became perfect, but because the mind stopped nourishing what weakened it. And in that moment, a powerful truth becomes clear. The life you want does not begin when everything around you changes. It begins the moment you stop feeding the things that drain your spirit. 24. The day you master your energy, you master your life. There is a moment in many people's lives when they begin to realize that the greatest force shaping their experience is not external success, other people's opinions, or even the challenges they face. The true force shaping their life is the way they use their energy. Every thought they follow, every reaction they allow, and every emotion they feed becomes part of the environment their mind lives in. When a person begins to understand this deeply, they also begin to understand something powerful. Mastering your energy is the beginning of mastering your life. Most people never consciously learn how their energy works. They grow up responding automatically to whatever happens around them. When someone criticizes them, they react immediately. When something goes wrong, they worry endlessly. When people around them complain or argue, they absorb that atmosphere without realizing how deeply it affects them. Over time, this constant reaction spreads their energy in many directions at once. The mind becomes crowded with unfinished thoughts, emotional tension, and worries about situations that cannot be controlled. Even when nothing dramatic is happening, the person feels tired because their energy has been scattered across countless small disturbances. Buddhist wisdom has long pointed toward this hidden pattern. The teachings connected to the Gautama Buddha emphasize that the quality of life is shaped largely by the condition of the mind. When the mind is calm and balanced, even difficult circumstances can be approached with clarity. But when the mind is constantly reacting and consuming its energy, even ordinary situations begin to feel overwhelming. Mastering your energy begins with awareness. The first step is noticing where your attention goes throughout the day. Many people are surprised when they observe their thoughts closely. They discover that large portions of their energy are spent replaying conversations from the past, imagining problems that may never happen, or reacting emotionally to things that have already passed. This constant mental movement drains enormous energy. Imagine a lamp that shines its light in every direction at once. The light becomes weak because it is scattered, but when the light is focused in one direction, it becomes powerful. The same principle applies to the mind. When attention is scattered across endless distractions and emotional reactions, the mind feels weak and exhausted. When attention becomes focused and aware, the mind becomes strong and stable. This strength does not come from controlling the world around you. It comes from controlling how your energy is used. For example, consider how people often react to criticism. A single negative comment can stay in the mind for hours or even days. The person may replay the conversation repeatedly, imagining what they should have said differently. Each repetition consumes energy, even though the situation itself has already ended. But when a person begins mastering their energy, they approach criticism differently. They listen calmly. If the comment contains useful insight, they learn from it. If it reflects misunderstanding or emotional frustration from the other person, they allow it to pass. Instead of replaying the moment endlessly, they return their attention to the present. This simple change protects a tremendous amount of mental energy. Another important part of mastering energy involves emotional reactions. Emotions are natural and valuable signals, but when they control every response, they can quickly drain the mind. Imagine someone speaking to you in anger. Without awareness, the mind reacts instantly. Your voice becomes louder, your thoughts race, and the situation escalates. But when energy is mastered, the process becomes different. The emotion appears, but it is observed rather than immediately expressed. You take a breath. You notice the reaction forming. Then you choose how to respond. Sometimes the response is calm explanation. Sometimes it is quiet listening. Sometimes it is simply walking away from unnecessary conflict. Each time you pause before reacting, you strengthen your control over your energy. This practice gradually builds emotional stability. Situations that once triggered intense reactions begin losing their power. The mind becomes more resilient, because it is no longer constantly pushed around by every disturbance. Mastering energy also changes how a person approaches their daily environment. Many people spend long periods in spaces filled with negativity, complaint, or emotional tension. They may not notice how strongly these environments influence their mental state, but when awareness grows, the person begins choosing environments more carefully. They seek conversations that encourage understanding instead of constant criticism. They spend time in spaces that allow their mind to breathe. They reduce exposure to sources of stress that offer no real benefit. These choices protect energy that would otherwise be drained. Over time, the person begins feeling calmer even during ordinary moments. Simple activities become more enjoyable because the mind is not constantly carrying emotional pressure. Another powerful change appears in the way the person relates to their own thoughts. Many individuals lose enormous energy fighting with themselves internally. They criticize their mistakes repeatedly and compare themselves endlessly with others. But when energy is mastered, the relationship with the mind changes. Instead of attacking themselves mentally, they observe their thoughts with curiosity. They notice patterns without judging them harshly. When a negative thought appears, they do not automatically believe it. They examine it. Is this thought useful? Is it helping me grow? Or is it simply repeating an old habit? If the thought is not helpful, they allow it to pass. This simple skill prevents countless hours of unnecessary mental conflict. Energy that was previously consumed by self-criticism becomes available for creativity, learning, and presence. As this practice continues, the person begins noticing a deeper transformation. Their mind feels quieter. Thoughts still appear, but they move more gently through awareness. The constant background noise that once filled every moment begins fading. In this quietness, clarity emerges. Decisions become easier because the mind is not overwhelmed by emotional turbulence. Relationships become healthier because responses are thoughtful rather than reactive. Challenges become manageable because energy is focused rather than scattered. Gradually, the person experiences something that once seemed rare: inner stability. Inner stability means that peace does not disappear every time circumstances change. Unexpected problems may still arise, but they are approached with calm attention. Criticism may still occur, but it does not shake the person's sense of worth. Uncertainty may still appear, but it no longer creates constant fear. This stability is the natural result of mastering energy. Instead of allowing every situation to control your mind, you become the one guiding your attention. Life begins to feel less chaotic because your reactions are no longer automatic. You become more deliberate in your choices, more patient in your conversations, more aware of how your thoughts influence your experience. And slowly you begin realizing that mastering your energy does not only change your emotional state, it changes the direction of your life. When your energy is focused, your goals become clearer. When your mind is calm, your decisions become wiser. When your reactions are balanced, your relationships become more meaningful. All of these changes grow from the same simple practice: learning how to guide your attention instead of letting it wander endlessly. Over time, this practice becomes natural. You no longer need to remind yourself constantly. Awareness begins guiding your responses automatically. Your presence becomes calm, even in difficult situations. Others may notice this stability and describe it as confidence or wisdom. But inside, you understand something deeper. You simply stopped wasting your energy on what drains you. And once that change happens, life begins to align in a new way. The mind becomes clearer. The heart becomes lighter. The path forward becomes easier to see, because the day you truly learn to master your energy is the day you begin mastering your life. 25. The moment you protect your inner world, the outer world loses its power over you. There is a quiet discovery that many people eventually make: if they spend enough time observing their own mind. They begin to notice that the world outside them has far less control over their peace than they once believed. For many years, they assumed that their happiness depended on circumstances going the right way. They believed that peace would arrive when people treated them perfectly, when life unfolded according to their expectations, and when problems finally disappeared. But slowly, through awareness and experience, they begin to realize something surprising. The outside world does not control their peace nearly as much as the condition of their inner world. The inner world is the space where thoughts appear, emotions arise, and meaning is created. It is the quiet environment inside the mind where experiences are interpreted. Two people can live through the same event and feel completely different afterward. One person may remain calm and understanding, while the other feels angry or deeply upset. The difference does not come from the event itself, but from how the inner world processes it. Most people grow up without learning how to protect this inner space. Their mind becomes open to every disturbance that appears around them. A careless comment from someone else can occupy their thoughts for hours. A small disappointment can dominate their emotional state for the rest of the day. Without realizing it, they allow the outside world to move freely through their inner environment. Over time, this pattern creates a feeling of vulnerability. The person feels as if their peace depends entirely on the behavior of others. If people act kindly, they feel calm. If someone criticizes them, their mood collapses. Their emotional stability rises and falls with every external interaction. Buddhist wisdom points toward a powerful realization about this pattern. The teachings connected to the Gautama Buddha emphasize that freedom begins when a person learns to guard their inner world carefully. This does not mean ignoring reality or pretending that challenges do not exist. Instead, it means recognizing that not every external event deserves unlimited access to your thoughts and emotions. Protecting your inner world begins with awareness of what you allow inside your mind. Imagine your inner world as a peaceful home. If the door of that home remains open without any awareness, anyone passing by can enter. Some visitors may bring kindness and understanding, but others may bring anger, criticism, or chaos. If every visitor is allowed to stay indefinitely, the peaceful atmosphere inside the home gradually disappears. But when you become aware, you begin acting as the guardian of that space. You notice when negative thoughts attempt to enter. You notice when someone else's emotional storm tries to pull you into conflict. You notice when worries about the future attempt to fill the entire room. Instead of accepting every visitor automatically, you pause. You observe. You decide whether the visitor belongs there. This ability to choose what remains in your mind is the foundation of inner strength. For example, consider how easily people absorb the emotional energy of others. If someone around them is angry or frustrated, they often feel compelled to match that emotion. The atmosphere becomes contagious. But when a person protects their inner world, they respond differently. They notice the other person's emotion, but they do not automatically adopt it. They remain calm even when others become tense. They listen carefully, without allowing the emotional storm to take control of their mind. This calm presence often changes the entire interaction. Instead of escalating conflict, the conversation becomes more balanced. Instead of reacting impulsively, both sides have the opportunity to understand each other more clearly. Protecting your inner world also changes how you experience criticism. In the past, criticism may have felt like a direct attack on your identity. A negative comment might linger in your thoughts long after the conversation ended. But when you guard your inner space, criticism is processed differently. You listen calmly. You examine whether the comment contains something useful. If it does, you learn from it. If it does not, you release it. The comment no longer becomes a permanent resident inside your mind. It simply passes through. This approach preserves enormous amounts of emotional energy. Instead of replaying situations endlessly, the mind remains available for present awareness. Another important aspect of protecting the inner world involves managing attention. Attention is one of the most powerful forms of energy a human being possesses. Whatever receives your attention begins influencing your thoughts and emotions. If attention constantly focuses on problems, the mind begins feeling overwhelmed. If attention focuses on comparison with others, the mind begins feeling inadequate. If attention repeatedly returns to past regrets, the mind becomes trapped in disappointment. But when attention is guided with awareness, a different experience becomes possible. You begin noticing moments of calm that were previously overlooked. You become more present during conversations. You appreciate simple experiences such as breathing, walking, or listening. The inner atmosphere gradually shifts from tension to clarity. This shift does not require removing every challenge from life. Problems will always appear from time to time. But when your inner world is protected, those problems lose their ability to dominate your entire mental landscape. They become situations to address rather than emotional storms that take control of your thoughts. Another powerful change appears in relationships. Many people feel drained because they constantly try to control how others behave. They analyze every interaction and attempt to manage every misunderstanding. But when you protect your inner world, you begin recognizing that other people's emotions belong to their own journey. You can listen with empathy. You can communicate with honesty. But you no longer feel responsible for carrying everyone else's emotional burdens. This realization creates balance. Relationships become less exhausting because you are no longer absorbing every mood or expectation placed upon you. Instead, you offer presence and understanding while maintaining your own stability. Over time, this practice creates a deep sense of independence. Your peace no longer depends on perfect circumstances. Your emotional stability no longer depends on constant approval. The outside world continues moving as it always has, but it no longer dictates the state of your mind. This independence creates a quiet confidence. You move through life with calm awareness rather than constant reaction. Unexpected situations still appear, but they do not overwhelm you. Criticism still occurs, but it does not define you. Uncertainty still exists, but it no longer creates endless anxiety. You begin living from the inside out rather than from the outside in. Instead of letting the world shape your inner state, your inner stability begins shaping how you experience the world. This is the quiet freedom that many people search for without realizing where it begins. They try to change their environment, their relationships, or their circumstances, hoping peace will finally arrive. But the deeper transformation begins when they turn their attention inward, when they learn to guard the space where thoughts and emotions are formed, when they recognize that their inner world deserves protection just as much as their physical space. And once this understanding becomes part of daily life, something remarkable happens. The world outside may still be unpredictable. People may still behave in ways you cannot control. Situations may still change unexpectedly, but your peace remains steady. Because the moment you begin protecting your inner world is the moment the outside world loses its power to control it. And from that moment forward, your life begins unfolding with a calm strength that no external chaos can easily disturb. As you reflect on these lessons, one truth begins to appear again and again. The greatest change in your life does not happen when the world around you becomes perfect. It happens when the relationship you have with your own mind begins to change. Many people spend years trying to fix everything outside themselves. They try to change other people, control every situation, and force life to move according to their expectations. But peace rarely appears through that struggle. Real peace begins when you become aware of how your energy is being used. When you stop giving your attention to every argument, every opinion, and every emotional disturbance, something powerful happens. Your mind becomes lighter, your thoughts become clearer. Situations that once felt overwhelming begin to feel manageable. You start noticing that many of the burdens you carried were never truly yours. Buddhist wisdom has always pointed toward this quiet transformation. The teachings of the Gautama Buddha remind us that the mind is both the source of suffering and the source of liberation. When the mind is constantly reacting, clinging, and resisting, life feels heavy. But when the mind becomes aware, calm, and balanced, life begins to flow more peacefully. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is necessary for a clear and stable life. It allows you to respond to the world with wisdom instead of constant reaction. It allows you to build relationships based on respect instead of emotional exhaustion. And most importantly, it allows you to experience life without carrying unnecessary weight inside your mind. As you move forward, remember that this transformation does not require dramatic changes overnight. It grows through small choices made every day. Each time you pause before reacting, you strengthen your awareness. Each time you release a thought that drains your spirit, you reclaim your energy. Each time you choose peace instead of conflict, you reshape the atmosphere of your life. Slowly, these choices begin to create a different way of living. A life where your mind is no longer crowded with unnecessary noise. A life where your energy is guided by awareness rather than scattered by reaction. A life where peace is not something you occasionally experience, but something that quietly becomes part of who you are. And once you reach that point, you realize something beautiful. The peace you were searching for was never far away. It was waiting for the moment you finally chose to protect the energy within you.